Listen. We see you in the comments. Over under 542. James, I couldn't let you have that. I couldn't let you have it. I hope y'all took the under. 5 Adam took the under. Dwight, you're 100% right. We are late. We got a little excited in the green room talking recruits, right? Talking about some of these wins, but fear not. We saved a lot of those conversations for y'all, and we will give y'all our opinion on some interesting recruiting wins. Alabama absolutely surging right now in recruiting. If I'm not mistaken, top 5 on every recruiting service you could go to. Number 3 with a lot of them has one of the highest average recruit ranks. See if I don't set the James, you know what? You are probably right, and I do appreciate you for that, my man. Shout out for you being in here. What a weekend for Alabama. They're not alone. Big recruiting wins across the nation. We're going to talk about that today because Alabama is stacking wins on the trail. And gentlemen, we heard not long ago that Kalen DeBoer can't recruit. Well, I'm going to tell y'all what, for a guy that can't recruit, I like the way he's recruiting right now. Before we pop this off, we have SEC Outlook as well tonight. We're going to be going through the SEC teams, giving you a rundown on what you need to know, who could make a run at this league. But before we get there, as always, I got to introduce my rowdy entourage here this evening. We have Jake. Jake, how you doing?
Good. I'm good. I'm good. I'm excited, man, because of course, everybody didn't know, but I knew. Come on, man. Like killing the boar. I knew what was coming. Come on, baby. Let's go. Man, no, that's not necessarily all the way true. You guys knew. You guys knew. But I don't think everybody knew, you know what I'm saying? But I'm excited to get into this tonight, man. I've been waiting all day to hang out with my boys. Yes.
Coach Sean, how you doing?
Doing good, man. Doing exceptionally well. Can't wait to get into this, break it down, and really get the people what they want, man. Let's go.
Yeah, it's going to be an SEC show tonight, ladies and gentlemen, and a lot of recruiting news, right? We might venture out of the SEC. I do want to talk a little bit about Lincoln Riley's newest win, right? Very good addition to that team. They have a lot of questions on the defense. One of the things I talked about earlier, gentlemen, I guess we'll go ahead and get this out of the way now. That way we can dive into what we really want to talk about. One of the things, guys, the crux of Lincoln Riley has always been the defense. We know that. I've talked about it until I'm blue in the face. I've given y'all the numbers, what you have to rank as a defense to even compete for a national championship. I'm not going to go over it. But what I am going to go over, what I did say today is they're moving to the Big Ten. Now, the Pac 12 is an interesting league, right? The Pac 12 was a league where even if you didn't have the Jimmies and the Joes, if you had the X's and O's, you could make some headway. You could make some waves. The Big 12 was a little bit that way, right? Like, obviously, you had your two juggernauts, Texas and Oklahoma, in the Big 12, that they had both the Jimmies and the Joes and the X's and O's. That's why they were, especially Oklahoma. I mean, goodness gracious, winning the Big 12 seemed like every single year. But the SEC and the Big 10, gentlemen, they have the X's and the O's. You look at the coaching staffs in both of those leagues, they got some damn good coaches. They've got the Jimmies and the Joes. So one of the things I talked about today for Lincoln Riley and USC is how impressive it is what they have done on the defensive side of the ball. I'm just going to quickly run through this, and then I'll get each of your opinion, and then we're going to dive into Alabama football recruiting and SEC talk. But this is the current defensive class for USC. They have Justice Terry, the number 7 defensive player, the number 7 player in the nation, number 2 defensive lineman, 5-star. Now, he's from Georgia. Georgia's going to be pushing for a flip. We know this. You have Isaiah Gibson, number 36 national, number 2 edge. You have Hilton Stubbs, number 56 national, number 6 safety. You have Matai Tagoai. Guys, this might be one of my favorite prospects in the entire class. Seriously, if you haven't checked him out, after we get done, don't click off this video, but after we get done, go check out Matai Tagoai. If there was one linebacker in this class, like obviously Ty Jackson is up there, but if you said Ty, you can flip one linebacker, boy, it'd be tough for me not to say Matai Tagoai because he is fun to watch. He's played corner. He's played safety. He's played edge. Now he's linebacker, and he is explosive. They have Hayden Lowe, the addition they just got this weekend. And by the way, Matai Tagoai, number 78 in the nation, number 10 linebacker. Hayden Lowe, number 242 in the nation, number 19 edge. Gus Cordova, out the state of Texas, defensive lineman. And then cornerback Tristan Castro. So they've made a concentrated effort towards the defensive side of the ball. Gentlemen, what's your thoughts as I go down that list, talking about some of these defensive wins that this new staff for USC has been able to get?
Shoot, I mean, I think they've done a great job, and I think you have to give Lincoln Riley some credit. I get on Hall of Fame college football with Jason, the coach, and we talk about that, and I know how much Jason hates Lincoln Riley, but I mean, and he's big Oklahoma fan. That's an Oklahoma-based show, so. The thing is there though, and it's understandable, but you have to give him credit from a standpoint that maybe he sees a little bit of a change, right? From a standpoint of, hey, I need to make serious changes here on defense to solidify what I'm trying to do and be relevant in the sense of not being just this average team, right? And then you look at, I think the biggest question mark, which has been brought up numerous times, obviously, is his strength and conditioning program, but that's another topic for another day. As far as what they're doing recruiting, it's obviously being noticed, right? They are making a strong push. You have to give them credit from what they are looking at and paying attention to, and the type of guys they're able to get that notice. Now, the question is going to be, and I kind of touched on this morning when I was on with Jason. The question is going to be is, will they be able to keep them all, right? And we brought this up from a standpoint that, man, if they do not perform this season in the Big Ten Big Ten like they should, then will these guys from the South, from the East, who are seeing the SEC doing their thing, will they want to stay? So that's going to be, and that could honestly be the question for almost any program. But
naturally,
in the end of the day, I mean, you got to win, right? That's what gets people excited. But I can say it's going to be interesting to see if they can maintain this momentum that they've got, because USC does have some momentum in their recruiting field. So,
yeah, and we talked about this, or we were going to talk about this last time. There's a very realistic possibility they could be team number 5 in the Big Ten at the end of the season. Coach Sean, what's your take on the way they're recruiting, and what happens if they are team number 5 in the Big Ten?
I think they're recruiting great. I think Lincoln understands that he may have cost himself a national championship because of the defensive side of the ball at Oklahoma. We all know offense has never been the problem for this guy, right? Offense has never been the problem. These guys score points. They've had great quarterback play. They've had great offensive line play, great wide receiver play. We know that. But this guy's defenses has sucked, right? I mean, I don't know no other way to put it.
No, that's the truth.
I mean, they sucked, bro. Like they're not very good. For all the talent they had at USC with Caleb and all of these kids and the tight ends and offensive linemen and running backs and all these great things, man, they were utterly ridiculous on defense. I watched that scheme sometime that Domani was in, and they was bailing all the time. Jake, every time I look at him, he was bailing. I'm like, what the hell are they doing? Like 3rd and 1, and you bailing? What?
Come on, man.
So I couldn't put my finger on it. Don't know what kind of scheme that was. So I think Lincoln understands offense is my forte. We're going to be good on offense. Let's go out. Let's put our resources to the defensive side of the ball. Let's try to go get some dogs, some real dogs. Let's pay whatever we got to pay. Let's get these kids here, and let's see what we can do. Now, with all the success that they've had recruiting these kids on the defensive side of the ball, if they come out and flounder and be the 3rd, 4th, 5th best team in that conference, man, that seat going to get real hot. It's going to be a lot of hot asses in California, right? I mean, because listen, this is USC. We appreciate your great offense. We appreciate it, but we did not hire you and buy you all these wonderful perks and bring you here for us to be 5th in any conference. So I do think Lincoln, this is going to be a very interesting year, man, because it's a lot of established coaches that just may feel some warmth, on the buttocks area if they don't get it done, including Lincoln Riley.
And Coach, the reason why I love how you ended that, what makes me sit back, right? And I have a video that I will be releasing later this week, probably Wednesday or Friday, right? Depending. Remember, Thursday, over on Bleacher Report. You can catch me over there. Download the Bleacher Report app. You'll see me over there. I'll let you know the time a little bit later. But I love the way you ended that, Coach, because I love a lot of what Lincoln Riley and USC did this offseason in terms of hires. Doug Belk to coach that secondary. What a hire. What a hire. Eric Henderson along the defensive front. Now, I know that you will have some people say, oh, well, he's the one who developed Aaron Donald. No. Aaron Donald has been a problem child for a while, right? Now, that being said, Aaron Donald himself has said, hey, this guy helped my game. So for Aaron Donald to say that, who is already great, saying, hey, he was able to help me unlock maybe another level, well, that's high praise. I'll give you that. He was in the NFL. I love those hires. Absolutely love them. But there's another hire that, while I love, it made me, when I saw it, sit up. And I said, now that's interesting. That's Matt Entz.
Yeah.
Who's the linebackers coach and helping with the defense. Gentlemen, did you know Matt Entz as a head coach is 60-11? He has 2 NCAA Division I national championships.
Matt Entz.
If Lincoln doesn't get it done, I think the coach is already right there. It's Matt Entz. He was over at North Dakota State, and I know someone can say, hey, there's a massive difference between Big Ten and North Dakota State. Sure, but North Dakota State's been a power, right? Like, it's just like we talk about guys with Kalen DeBoer. He had NAIA level talent going up against NAIA level teams, and he was doing a great job.
Yeah.
Never heard of him? Boomer, listen, don't tell on yourself, Boomer. Don't tell on yourself. Matt Entz, if you know college football, you know coaching, you know Matt Entz. That dude is a hell of a coach.
That's why Carson Wentz came from. That's Carson Wentz, NDSU, the Bisons.
Yep.
Right? Yeah, that's Carson Wentz. That's why he's drafted. So, I mean, dude, they always have players coming out of there. And this is considered, like, that school is considered the powerhouse, right, of that level of college football. They are considered the powerhouse. They are no joke. Shoot, doesn't Colorado play them to open the season?
Better be careful. Colorado better be careful.
That's right.
Joshua says, and Trey Lance. And Matt Entz out there, he was the linebacker coach and defensive coordinator from 2014 to 2018, head coach from 2019, 2023, 2 championships. Yeah. And now he's the assistant head coach and linebackers coach over at USC. Guys, I'm telling you, I think that seat, though it's not hot right now for Lincoln Riley, if they don't perform, what's to stop them from being like, okay, well, Matt Entz has won championships. All due respect to you, Lincoln. Like, you've been great in college football, but he has championships. Yeah. What's to stop them from doing that?
What position group is he coaching again?
Linebacker. I agree with you 100% here, Boomer. Still can't wait to see them play in the snow.
If the linebacker group plays well and the kids really gravitate to this guy and USC struggle, you just might see that. And by the way, man, shout out to Buck. Shout out to Antoine Currington. Shout out to Dwight. Shout out to Sean Williams, man. Shout out to everybody, man. Good to see y'all, man. Good to see you guys for sure, for sure. Shout out to Adam.
Shout out to Boomer.
Adam in the house. Much love, Boomer. You know what I'm saying? Much love to everybody in this chat. Thank you for tapping in with us. But yeah, man, you might be right. I mean, that coach, that's not an average coach you brought in. This is a national championship. Shout out to Big Bama Brand, Ready Rock, man, my brother right there, Big Bama Brand.
Yeah.
Much love to you, man. Listen, This guy is not an average coach, bro. He's not. I mean,
No,
you
man.
might be right. You might be right. It might be something there. You can't pay people what you paid Lincoln and expect the great people of USC to not have a contingency somewhere. They can't be happy with the product on the field. I mean, Lincoln's a great offensive coach. We all know that, right? But his teams have underperformed. I mean, it's no way around it. You've had great talent, but even at Oklahoma, man, even at Oklahoma, the offense was never the problem. Kyler, you had all these great kids, but I would dare say, because of his defensive prowess or lack thereof, Oklahoma probably cheated themselves out of a national championship at least one of those years. That's a fact. What's up, Breezy?
Yeah, and guys, I have questions about a lot of this USC defense. I do.
Yeah.
Right? They retained Bear Alexander. That was odd.
Mhm.
Call it what it is. But I mean, in fairness, is it any more odd than some of the other things we've seen in college football in the transfer portal? Not necessarily. So from Germany with the 5, I don't even, what is that? What currency is that?
That's
I'm gonna look
European.
like an idiot right now. Is that pounds?
That's it's I don't know. I don't
No,
know what they call it in
I
Europe.
don't know.
I don't know. I
I
just
don't
say
know. I'm gonna look like
European.
an idiot. But thank you so much, Sven, from Berlin, Germany. Never been out there. Got some friends out there. Euros. Thank you, James. God, it's a good thing we have people in here that
Euro.
are
That's right. Damn it.
that are a lot
European.
smarter than me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for the €5. And look at everybody. Thank you so much. Everybody is in here making sure that I don't look like an idiot for any longer than I need to. And I certainly do appreciate that, because if it wasn't for y'all, I'd be looking dumb. So thank you very much for that, Sven, saying Hail State from Berlin, Germany. That's awesome, man, to see people from Germany tuning in and watching, man.
Dude.
That's awesome, Sven. Thank
Joe,
you very
what's
much.
up, Joe? How you doing, Joe?
So yeah, guys, the last thing I'll say on this USC thing, and then we'll go into Joe. Happy that you're here, man. Happy everybody's in here. 5 Adam, Smooth, Adam, James, C Dub. We have got Breezy in here. Breezy, happy you're in here. Joshua, Antoine, Shun. We have the whole group. LaQuasia, happy you're in here, LaQuasia. Good to see you. Hope you're doing good. We got Boomer. We got James Thrice. I mean, Dwight. Everybody in here. So last thing I'll say, I like Crimson Dad. Happy you're in here. I like this USC linebacking room. There's a name in this USC linebacking room that I have been a fan of. Right, Boomer. He's seen it. James, I know you've seen it. Brian, happy you're in here. Eric Gentry. He's a really interesting player, guys. He came from Arizona State. Tall, lanky.
Yeah.
I think that the problem with Gentry is they didn't know what to do with him. He's kind of a tweener, right?
Mhm.
Like in terms of, do you want to have him rush the edge, or do you want him to be kind of more of a rangy, athletic inside linebacker? I think Ince is going to know what to do with him. And if I'm not mistaken, Ince has talked about being very impressed with him. So Coach Sean, to your point, if those linebackers perform well, if they like him, if the defense likes Ince and they finish 5th, and that's a realistic possibility, finishing 5th in the Big Ten, he might be your next head coach.
Let me ask you a question, Ty.
Go for it, Coach. You already know this is a round table. We do whatever.
At this point, Jake, at this point, Ty, at this point, everybody in the chat, we've talked about this before, but I really want you to let this sink in really, 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 really well. I know it's not this year, but at some point, USC is going to have to go to Rutgers, New Jersey, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let me check out
the very
schedule.
next week. They may have to go to State College, Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Now that's Los Angeles, California. It doesn't drop below 70 that much in LA. I got family out there, right? And yes, I know they play Oregon, they play Washington on their Pac-12 schedule, but this is a different kind of cold, man.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
LA to Columbus, Ohio. I think that's about what, 15, 16, 1700 miles, pretty close to 2,000 miles.
Probably about 4 or 5 hour flight, 4.5 hours.
So
flight.
There's an opportunity for USC to play, especially in the month of November. They could easily play 2-3 teams where it's snow. I want to know how they're going to react to that, man. I want to know how they're going to react to playing in -10, -3, 14-degree weather with the wind blowing, cold, that
Yeah.
Midwest northern cold weather, bro. Right? So, and to play consecutive games. If there is no Washington, then you go back to UCLA. You
Mhm.
know, Oregon, then you go back to Stanford. No. You're gonna have multiple games in this kind of weather. It's gonna be very, very, very interesting to see how these guys react to that.
I got their schedule right here for you, Coach Sean. I am going to see if I can't. Remember, guys, I switched to a different browser and I'm a little bit dumb, right? Let's call it. Let's call it what it is. So I'm gonna attempt to get this up here for y'all.
I think they escaped this year. I think their first year they don't really have
Yeah, I
that
don't think
many
so.
cold games. But that next year, every home game that they have will have to be, an away game. So it gets worse. It gets worse.
Is that pulled up
Mhm.
for y'all to see?
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
start at LSU. You go to Utah State afterward. You don't go to Utah State. You get what I mean, obviously. They can get
Yeah. Yeah.
You go from LSU, what's the deal? I've seen so much stuff about them trying to get out of that game.
That was for like 2 years. They tried basically to renegotiate that schedule because they
Why?
felt like I to be honest, man, because that's the Vegas game. I think it had a lot to do with they just do not want to open it. It's like
They don't want to open with
Lincoln.
LSU,
no,
Lincoln Riley is a trip, man. He's a
I think
trip,
it's
bro.
really.
isn't he?
I mean, literally,
Man.
they tried to. I mean, to the point you saw the article, and granted, we can't sit there and say 110% this is exactly how it was done, of course, right? But based on what we have been told through reports is that he tried to even negotiate that through his agent because they have the same agent, him and Brian Kelly, that to cancel that game, which is
Come on,
and
man.
they
That's a
and
great game for college football. What are we doing, man?
dude, well, that's that. You know what that is? That's trying to save
Flashbacks.
that and trying to save your ass.
Yes.
And I need to do better to be like Kalen DeBoer. I'm going to try my best to stop cussing as much.
But
So I apologize, everybody.
And I get it, guys. I get it. But if you're Lincoln Riley, Coach Sean, Jake, real quick, answer me this: undefeated. I said undefeated. This is chat. Thank you, Coach Sean. I need a spray
on,
bottle, right? I
dude,
need someone
do
to come
not.
and hit me with a spray bottle because I'm
We
all
got
over the place.
dude, Ty. We
Long
got
day.
conditioned. We got
I know,
conditioned.
I know, I know,
Yeah.
I know. How many streams do you do over there, right? Like it
I know. It's just the
I
way it goes.
apologize. I
Yeah.
apologize. Everybody in the chat,
The chat, because that's what it
name
is.
me a better year if you're Lincoln Riley to play LSU. Their pass defense was like 120th in the nation last year. I listen, I love Corey Raymond, great hire, but are they going to be number one game one? Of course not. They'll get better as the year goes on, but if you're going to catch LSU, this is the year to do it. Game one, their defense is a major question.
Yeah.
They just lost the Heisman Trophy winner. I don't know what their running game is going to look like because Jaden Daniels was the running game. They lost two very talented wide receivers, though, as I always say. That's probably my least concern for LSU. They always have wide. What better time to catch LSU week one? Why would you try and get out of this one? You're never going to catch them like this again. That's why oh my God.
Yep.
Can you all think of a better time to catch LSU, or am I tripping?
But honestly, if any team you're going to play, like the first game is the best game, especially if you're going to play like a powerhouse team.
Yeah.
Like between the first two games, that's when you want to play them. I'm going to be honest with you because that is your time frame of saying nobody under unless you've played each other every year and these coaches inside and out, very much like Kirby and Saban were, right? Because they had a very similar mindset when it came to defense. But when it comes to like some of these coming into like the Big Ten, or even like an SEC team playing USC, right? Like that's your time frame of when you want to actually try to capitalize on that because those tendencies, they're different, right? There's a different game plan. You're not going to be able to put it all together. You don't have all the film. You have to go back and look at previous stuff that's changed. So, I mean,
you know what? And I got to give a quick shout out. 1 to Crimson Blood 22 for the 22-22. I see what you did there, Crimson Blood. Don't think that flew by me, right? I might miss a lot,
baby.
but I saw this one. He says AAA in here to show support for the coaches. Respect. Thank you very much for that, AAA. And guys, Matt, he says, how about the table? Everyone pull up your seat to the table as we sit here on this evening's live stream. Pull up your seat, get cozy, and we'll all sit around the table and have this conversation. I like that a lot, Matt, in terms of what we call the chat. Pull up the seat to the table. We're all a part of it. I love that. That's a great one. As the Knights is in the Knights of the Round Table. Okay.
Yeah.
We got some good ones in here.
I like it. Okay.
Whose schedule is this? PG. Shout out to PG, guys.
PG.
I know that there's a lot of Alabama fans in here. Shout out to the AAA. PG Preston Gant does a fantastic job. OU guy, but he is dialed in with recruits. Let me tell you what, I've often said, and all of you of the Knights of the Table will know this, right? Will know this. I've often bragged that there was someone I knew who was very tapped in. You remember we said this back in March? I got a text from someone who said, hey, Bama's doing some great things behind the scenes. This was in March, letting me know that Bama is doing Bama things without Nick Saban. That was PG, ladies and gentlemen. He talks to the recruit, and he was the first one to tell me, hey, y'all are doing some interesting things without Saban. Shout out to PG. This is USC's schedule. So, Coach Sean, I want to pass it to you, right? Like, what better time is there to catch LSU?
That's a fact. That's a characteristic in Lincoln I just don't like. But let me shout out to Mr. Renrico. Shout out to my brother Renrico. Renrico, what's up, bro? Good to see you. Jay Jackson, JLB is in here. Jimmy LB. Shout out to all y'all, man. Chicken, James Thrice. Good to see y'all, boys, man. And Adam, good to see y'all for sure, man. Yeah, man. I mean, that's a characteristic I just don't like it, bro. I mean, I didn't really like how he left Oklahoma. You had an opportunity to come to the SEC with Oklahoma, an established program that you had already won ridiculous amounts of games with, but you chose to go to the Pac-12. Nothing wrong with that, right? But it's clear you didn't want to come to. I mean, I got all the respect in the world for USC. We know their history. We know what they do.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
All the respect in the world for those guys. But Oklahoma, he had those guys in the hunt every single year. So when I see this guy now using agents and all this kind of thing, really trying to get out of that game, trying to negotiate a way to get out of playing LSU the first game, it doesn't shock me. It doesn't shock me, man. I mean, this guy clearly, he wants to win games. I get it. I understand it from a statistical purpose, but from a competitive purpose, this guy doesn't want that kind of smoke. He doesn't want to open up with LSU. It's in Vegas. It's in your quote unquote backyard. Vegas is much closer to LA than it is Louisiana. So I don't even see what he's bitching about. I mean, I don't excuse my language. I don't see what he's complaining about. Play the dadgum game. Like Ty said, it's the best season to catch LSU. Jaden Daniels is not there. You know what I mean? I personally hope LSU beat them to sleep. I would really enjoy that. I want the SEC to send a message to those guys. So I don't really respect it though, Ty. I mean, we got to look at Florida's schedule. That's all you got to do. If Florida can play that schedule, Lincoln should shut the hell up and play the damn game.
100.
Shut the hell up and play the game.
100.
Yeah.
I got nothing else to add to that.
Yes.
I got nothing else to add. And I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. USC is redoing their defensive staff. Oh, well, your defense wasn't any good last year.
Correct.
It can only go up, right? And I know the same thing can be said for LSU. And I know both teams are replacing a quarterback. You have Branch. Get him the ball.
Get him the ball. Yeah.
And maybe think about putting him at cornerback. I don't know, right? Just put him on the field.
That
and
kid
let
is awesome.
him. That kid is insane, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's electric.
Yes.
Insane. Oh my God. I mean,
Yes.
you want to talk about, if we were talking about players across the nation you wish were in Crimson, Whew, that's a name. I think everybody out there would like to have Branch on their team. We move forward. You go from LSU. I don't know. I'm fired up about that. I don't know why you try and get out of that game. Shout out Lynn in the chat. Good to see you in here, man. Good to see you in here. So then you have Utah, you have a bye week, and then you have Michigan. Coach, this is that stretch you're talking about.
Yeah.
Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Penn State, Maryland, Rutgers, and Washington. Don't sleep. Minnesota is one of those teams where they can be sneaky good. Now, they had a wide receiver this past year who was a technical route runner. I don't know that he even got drafted, right? I'm not saying that he was a world beater. I don't think he was the fastest. I don't think he was the biggest, but he could run a crisp route. And I enjoyed watching him a lot. In fact, I tweeted about it. I'd have to go back and find. But what are we thinking about this stretch right here? Because then after that bye week, it's Nebraska, UCLA, Notre Dame to finish it off. And we don't have to worry about this last one. No offense, but they ain't making it to the Big Ten championship. I promise you that. I promise you that. Coach Sean, I'll start with you.
Man, listen, like I said, this schedule this year, they kind of got by. I mean, it's a tough schedule, but I was strictly looking at the road games and the travel. I think next year, when it's flipped around, I think it'll be even worse for those guys. It's going to be interesting, man. It's going to be interesting to see who they how these teams play in November. It's going to be really interesting to see how USC handles that, coming from that environment and living in that environment in the great weather and the palm trees every day to a rainy, snowy couple of games that could potentially be back-to-back, whether it's on the road or at home. You come back home to great weather, you go back to a horrible game. You come back home to some great weather, you go back to another horrible game. So it's going to be very interesting, man. USC, if they're not careful, man, could easily lose multiple games back-to-back on that schedule. I don't know if they're going to beat Penn State. I don't know if they're going to go to Minnesota and win. I don't know if they're going to beat Wisconsin and then come back to Maryland. Man, it could be a rough go for these guys. That's what I believe.
Shout out to Hayes Fawcett in the chat. Guys, if you don't know Hayes, you're not following recruiting. Point blank, period, right? The guy who set an entire trend in our industry. Hayes, happy you're in here. Loved having you on the stream. We got to coordinate another time for you to hop on. I know, though, that recruiting is really starting to pop off, and I can imagine we only know recruiting, gentlemen, I always say is like an iceberg. We see what's on the surface, but underneath that water, boy, is it deep. And I can imagine Hayes knows right now there's probably a lot of moving parts. Would love whenever you get a break in the action, my man, for you to hop on here, talk with us. But Jake, talk with me. Oh, he's working on some commitment graphics right now. Don't tease me. We've had a good day. We've had a real good day.
Yeah, crazy, man. I think the thing is, when it comes down to this schedule, especially with SC, I don't know. How fast can they turn around that defense? How fast can they get these guys to understand these concepts? How quickly, and the next part is how they gel, right?
Yeah.
Like, you have so much, there's a lot. There was some key pieces of turnover, right? You do have a new quarterback, like, who we all know is not Caleb Williams. Caleb Williams, like, made their offense what it was. So, unless they have those pieces in place that allow for a smooth transition, it's going to be a little different than what Lincoln Riley's had, right? As far as, I'm not trying to say Miller Moss isn't good, because he is, but I just don't, you know what I mean? I just think we are.
I like Miller Moss. I
do 100%, but he's not Caleb Williams, right? Like,
right.
That's there is the offensive side of things doesn't so much change. It's not like they were like some studly offensive team. They put up points because of Caleb Williams. I mean, how many guys are getting out of sacks and doing what they're doing, right? Like, as far as flying around the field and he's twisting and turning and throwing the perfect balls. I mean, it's just it was kind of like watching it, Patrick Mahomes. He had a very much a Patrick Mahomes style of play. He was able to do things that not a lot of other quarterbacks can do. So I do think that It's going to be interesting. I don't know if that all comes together that fast, right? And so we will see how it goes. I think their schedule is going to be pretty tough too. On top of that, so with USC, I don't know. I'm used to seeing them from back in the day dominate, but for the longest time, it's been a very mediocre play. So we'll see what they do this next year.
Look at Lynn's comment. Lynn said, "I think the Maryland game will decide if they become."
I agree.
6-6. I think Maryland wins that game. Listen, that could be their record. Don't look now, but that could be their record. Like really, really, and truly, when you look at the schedule and you look at when they play these teams, that is not far-fetched by any stretch of the imagination.
Shout out to Dang Trojan in the chat. Dang, I do agree with you. He says Miller Moss could be a top 5 quarterback with
he's
the
good.
Big. I really do like Miller Moss. My question is does he completely fit the mold of a Lincoln quarterback? Because hear me out, Dang Trojan. You know me. We don't always agree, Dang Trojan. But I always give you my honest opinion, and I think you would meet me halfway in at least saying that my analysis is fair. Even if I'm wrong, it comes from a principled place and is fair. Lincoln is unbelievable whenever he has a quarterback that fits his mold. I mean, the results speak for themselves. And I'm not saying that he's not elite when he doesn't, but there's a drastic difference when Lincoln has a quarterback that fits the mold and when he doesn't. Now, Dang Trojan said that 8-4 would be a good year for USC this year. I agree. 8-4 would be, I would be like.
Yeah, I agree with that.
I agree
that would
with
be
that
a good
completely.
year.
Let me hold on, man. Wait.
Shout out to Jance. Sorry I had you in the back so long.
What's up, Jance?
What's up,
Jance?
I can't. I'm not on the regular panel right now. I'm on this, so I didn't see you back there.
I would ask Dang Trojan. No problem. I would ask Dang Trojan because he's a Trojan fan and he probably has more insight than I do. You would actually be happy 8-4 at USC? Like, is that where we're at? Like, you're happy with 8-4 at the University of Southern California? Man, what the hell's going on, man? Now, would that be a great year with this schedule, considering? Okay. But is that like the standard now? Is that what you guys? I mean, I'm just asking, Dang Trojan. I'm not hating. I'm really asking. Would you be happy with 8-4 at USC?
Jance, I want to turn it over to you. And I didn't mean to cut you off there, Coach. I apologize.
Oh, you good, brother. You good.
Jance, I want to turn it over to you. We're talking about USC before we dive into some of the recruiting. And you and I, we've talked about this, Jance, that Matt Entz is a very interesting hire. Very interesting because he's 60-11 as a head coach, 2 Division I NCAA titles at North Dakota State. If they don't have a great year, you have a great coach in waiting in Matt Entz. I know some people might not know the name, and that's an interesting name. Talk to me about where you see USC. And Coach Sean, to answer your question, and I actually really do love this answer from Dang Trojan. I got it, Trojan. I'm going to give you your flowers here. I do love this answer. He says it's college football. It's a year-by-year basis. You have to be realistic with where the program is currently. The standard is always national championships. I love that because it's like, hey, we know where we want to go, but we're not there right now. That's fair. That's fair. Jance, talk to me, man.
Well, first of all, I would just say this. I mean, like I said, to his credit, I respect I respect the realism, right? I respect the fact that he's trying to be real. I respect the fact that you're trying to be realistic about the situation. But if I'm paying my coach $10 million per year, I'm not paying him $10 million for 8-4. I'm paying him to potentially compete for a national championship. He is tied for 4th right now when it comes to being the highest paid coach in college football. I am not paying that dude. There's no way. Absolutely no way that 8-4 is unacceptable. I brought him here 3 seasons ago because I believe that he can elevate my program and potentially get this team to compete for the playoffs. And because you brought in Caleb Williams, because you brought in your defensive coordinator, because you brought in some of those players from Oklahoma, and then all of a sudden you brought in Jordan. They paid for Jordan Addison. They paid for Bear Alexander last season. You're getting all these players, the Marshawn Lloyds, all these players from these different universities. No, I expect you to dominate recruiting because that's the way it used to be over here. I expect you to dominate recruiting. I expect you to outcompete Washington. I expect you to definitely outcompete UCLA in your area. I expect you to to at least compete with Oregon, because we all know Oregon's been a powerhouse, and we all know that Dan Lanning in a year has turned Oregon into one of the biggest recruiting powerhouses in literally a year. So I'm expecting Lincoln Riley to do the exact same thing. And the fact of the matter is that that this season he's on track. But guess what? He's got a long way to go. Right now he's on track. But why wasn't this? Why couldn't he do this from the start? Why did it take Dan Lanning less than a year for him to get it started, when we all know that Oregon is not a bigger, well, maybe to this point, but Oregon overall is not a bigger brand than Southern California, especially when it comes to the football department. It is not. USC has far more resources, even though Phil Knight and Nike is located in Eugene. USC still has better resources than Oregon does. So no, I'm not going to accept 8-4. That's not going to be the standard of my football team, of my football program. The standard for this program is to at least make it to the playoffs. That is the standard. It is to compete for conference championships. And if I'm paying a coach $10 million, then there's either two things that needs to happen. Number one, we got to renegotiate that salary. If we're going to be realistic about the record, we need to renegotiate that salary, because $10 million is not going to be the standard. You had a Heisman Trophy candidate. You had a Heisman Trophy winner on your football team, and you barely survived. You barely survived last year. I'm not hearing that. If this was any other coach that's making less than $10 million, I won't even really say that. Let's just say, let's say they're a top 30 paid coach, right? They're top 30. Then I can understand that. I can be down with that. But when it comes to, you're the fourth highest paid coach. You're making just as money as Kalen DeBoer. You're making close to as money as Dabo Swinney and Kirby Smart and the rest of these coaches. Let's be honest here. If Kirby Smart was to have an 8-4 record, what would be the conversation for him right now? What the hell is going on? What the hell is going on right now? If Kalen DeBoer went 8 in his first year with Alabama, if he went 8-4 with Alabama right now, what would be the conversation about Kalen DeBoer be? Even though it's his first year, we can totally understand it. But majority of Bama fans would be pissed, because that's not the standard. That's not what they expect, especially coming from a national championship coach with the amount of talent that he has. They're not expecting 8-4. That would be a disgrace. So Lincoln Riley, with all that talent, with the amount of resources that you have, there is absolutely no way that 8-4 should be the standard. The standard should be above that, because I'm bringing in a coach not to go for that record. I'm bringing in a coach to potentially winning a national championship. And 2 back-to-back seasons of disappointment, that's not something that I visualize. And honestly, with Matt Enns being here, Lincoln Riley, for me, if we go 8-4, he's gone. But realistically speaking, this is probably going to be the year where if they go 8-4, you have one more year to prove yourself before we replace you.
I agree with that.
Was this? Well, hold on though. Was this year one? Year one for him?
For who?
For Lincoln Riley at USC. If it's year one,
no. He's been there for as long as Brent Venables has been
that's
at
right.
Oklahoma. He's been,
because I thought someone saying, I thought I saw a comment. I'm like, wait a minute, the year one. This is not just year one.
And Jans, I'm not going to lie to you. I completely forgot that Lincoln Riley was making $10 million.
Yeah,
facts. If 8-4 is the standard, then you should have kept Clay Helton for a lot cheaper.
Oh, yeah, that's true. And Trojan, I hear you talking about, but right now, I wouldn't worry about Bama's NIL because they're ahead of you in recruiting with the same amount of prospects.
And dude, you think this is done? Wait till we blow up the news in a second when we start talking.
Facts.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about Bama's NIL because right now they're ahead of you in recruiting.
Facts.
And they've done, I'd be much more concerned about where USC is. 8-4 isn't the standard. But I thought you said, okay. No, I hear you. But I think you're not rebuilding, but man, if USC doesn't have a good defense, that is where I'm really, really going to be disappointed, right? Because that's where it's like, okay, and here's the thing, guys. Whenever Lincoln Riley was hired there, when he brought Grinch with him, that's when I was like, oh boy, Alex Grinch hasn't had a good defense since 2013. He inherited an Ohio State defense that was one of the top defenses in the nation. It tanked when he was coaching it. The year after he left, wouldn't you know, it's back in the top 25 defenses in the nation. Right? Like that to me is the hard part. PG in here. Happy you're in here, PG. How's it going?
Yeah.
I had to hop in for a little bit of USC conversation.
I see.
some
You
eggs,
didn't even, you oh, okay. Well, give us your take.
Kimberly.
So I kind of agree with Jance. If Lincoln Riley does not have a good season this year, he's canned. But I don't think 8 wins is not a good season for them. I think the USC administration understands that they have to rebuild because that defense is, I mean, there's nobody like outside of Bear Alexander, who's, let's be honest, really at this point, weight-wise, not an interior defensive lineman. Like, they don't have anybody. So I think for USC, when you saw them make the move this offseason with Flynn as the defensive coordinator, which, by the way, the USC defensive coordinator out there and the defensive line coach, they are recruiting like nobody's business. The question is, can they hold on to these recruits?
Fair.
But I think they hired him to kind of I don't know what the conversation was, but if I had to guess, same conversation Oklahoma should have had with Lincoln Riley a long time ago, which was, you're going to run the offense and you're going to be the head coach. But we're going to hire your defensive coordinator for you, and you're not going to have any say in the defense whatsoever because you simply cannot put out a defense that wins you a championship. Like, you look at it, if Oklahoma would have had a top 35 defense the entire time Lincoln Riley was there, we would have won 2 national championships. We had those kind of teams. So I think for USC, they look at it and they say, okay, we're going to hire this guy. He's going to come in. He's going to take over all the defensive responsibilities. We want you to solely work in the offense. Now, I was saying in the chat that I think they'll go 7 to 8 games this year, and I think Miller Moss is going to have a really good year. The reason why is he doesn't have a Caleb Williams or a Kyler Murray or, I mean, shoot, even a Spencer Rattler to kind of rely on to be a superstar for him. He has to rely on Miller Moss, who hasn't been a super great quarterback in college, to be his guy. And the guy you recruited, Malachi Nelson's not there. So you not only have to rely on Miller Moss to be the guy, but you have to make him look so good that you can bring in a transfer next year until you can get your future quarterback in there. So I think Lincoln Riley is going to have to get as creative as he has been in probably 4 years as a play caller, because we know nobody else is calling his plays. So, I mean, for USC, I mean, they're going to get a win against LSU, and that's going to be a lot of momentum, but they're not beating the Michigans and the Penn States in that conference. I don't think they're even going to beat Washington. You know, I just don't think they have the talent level to compete like that. But 8 games gets you a good foundational starting point to be able to tell the recruits, hey, stick with us. You get to come in. Like, same thing BV's probably been telling these defensive recruits he's recruited. You get to come in and be starting probably right away. Like, you're going to get significant playing time because we don't have the depth here. We don't have the talent, but you can be the foundation point to get this started and going in the right direction.
Yeah, that's why USC is in such a weird place. And I know someone earlier asked about the move to the Big Ten. Lynn, whether or not, coaches, I have a question. Do y'all think it hurt USC by leaving the Pac-12 and jump into the Big Ten? I can't see them catching Ohio State. You got a point there. Michigan, Penn State, and Oregon. And that's the hard part, right? Like, that's why I say right now, it's such an interesting conversation. And Jance, to your point, I did forget that USC was paying him $10 million a year.
It's not $10 million. They're paying him $10 million, but they paid $20 million up front. So their investment is a lot bigger than $10 million a year.
Okay, yeah, that's okay. Okay, yeah, that's
because they had to pay his buyout in Oklahoma. They bought his house in Oklahoma, and they bought him a house in California.
Yeah, that's a lot. But I will say this with the question is I don't see if USC, here's the thing about it, right? We go right back to why winning is so dang important. Like, if they win and they can maintain a recruiting class with the defensive staff they have, right? Like, I can see them eventually coming to a point where they they do keep up with, Ohio State right now is on an unreal level with the type of talent they have. Granted, they spent $40 million basically to get it. So that's a whole nother story. But as far as like Michigan, yeah, you can keep up with that. Oregon, yeah, if you recruit like you're recruiting right now, like you're starting to make pushes in this recruiting field that's getting people to notice. And recruiting is an interesting game because it's very much, it's very much a momentum game. Honestly, it comes down to winning and momentum, because if you generate excitement, all these other kids notice it, and it's hard not to gravitate towards the excitement, right? It's like this shiny new thing, and it's hard not to go that route. Now, some kids have like just kind of like, this is what we're looking at, right? This is what we're focused on. PG, you just had that interview with the offensive tackle, Fasusi, right? And he had that kid has that mindset where he's not so much gravitating towards what's maybe necessarily exciting, but he really is locked in around, his thing was, it was a real family-based thing at Oklahoma. Like one of the things he noticed was like the family pictures going in on a visit. And that was a big deal for him. Right. So that you do have that, but at the same time, there is a momentum game in recruiting. So if you can win and you can maintain, and if USC does that, then I don't think you see them take this nosedive and necessarily hurt themselves by making this jump. I mean, they had to make this projection, and they had to really think about this too, from a standpoint of these guys, the administration side, in making that choice even to move, right? Because I mean, that's a big move. You better hope you can be successful if you're going to do it. You didn't do it for survival. You did it. You were one of the first teams to do it. So you have to have some confidence.
Well, and the problem is with USC is they were given false expectations when they won, 11 games their first year, 10 or 11 games. The problem is nobody cares about USC football out there.
Yeah.
That's the sad reality. And so because nobody cares about USC football in California, the thing that made USC great, especially on the recruiting trail, was they would lock up the state of California and take every 5-star recruit out there. Now they can't do that. They can't even keep Georgia and those kind of schools out of their state. So for USC, USC has to play this slow game at this point, redevelop your program, recreate an identity. You're going to have to play the transfer portal, and eventually you will be good enough to regain attention. But I mean, as a recruit, like, you're going to have to explain to your recruits, this stadium's not going to be packed when you come watch games for the next couple of years because we're rebuilding. And they don't care about USC football. We got the money to pay you as if people cared, but people are not going to fill up the stadium. But that's not why you're coming to play here.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think the question is how much time am I giving Lincoln Riley? Because at some point, man, that contract, we're going to take a look at that contract, and we're going to say to ourselves, does he really deserve Kalen DeBoer money? Does he really deserve close to Kirby Smart and Dabo Swinney sort of? Well, definitely Dabo Swinney money, but at least Dabo Swinney got the national championships. He earned that contract. Maybe not as recently, but he earned that contract. Kirby Smart earned that contract. Kalen DeBoer, based off of what he did at Washington, by the way, 4-8, turn it around, 10 wins in the national championship the following year, earned that contract. I am not bringing you in here to rebuild. I am bringing you in here to win. I am bringing you in here because we thought we can turn this program around and potentially be a championship perennial contender.
He earned the contract with being an offensive juggernaut at Oklahoma. I think USC thought that's what they were going to get, but then again, he came to a program where nobody cares about USC anymore. And so I think, again, like, their expectations of what he was going to bring was, I think, too little. And Caleb Williams just helped put a Band-Aid on it for the time being. I think if you're USC, you got to give him 2 more years. And I think in those 2 years, you have to see improvement on the defensive side of the ball. Yeah. We know Lincoln Riley will put out a top, let's just say 35 defense, even though I think that's asinine to say to be that high. But let's just say 35, because it'll probably be top 15. But let's just say top 35. If he continues to do that and your defense this year is top 75, and then next year it gets into the top 50, if you're USC, maybe you sit back and say, well, let's see how this plays out. Because a top 50 defense and a top, let's say, 15 offense, you're in the playoffs.
I like that. It
Maybe if they can
depends.
get out of the Big Ten, that's the problem. Is that
That
they're in
is,
the Big Ten.
we can say it about if he was in the Pac-12 conference, we could have said that. You're not no top 50 defense. Even if you have a great offense, that's not going to be good enough because there's going to be much tougher competition. There is going to be much tougher talent pool. It's going to be a much tougher environment. You have to go. Imagine you have to go on the road in Ann Arbor, to Madison, Wisconsin. You got to go on the road to Iowa. USC schedule. Let's be honest, it's light. And the reason why it's light is because in November, you don't have to go into these cold environments. And
you don't have Columbus.
Exactly. Right. The following years, for the potential for the future, you may have to play in a snow game in Minnesota. It snows in November. It snows in the north, especially in Ohio and Michigan, especially when you're right near Lake Michigan. Those freezing temperatures, that wind chill filling up against your face when you're playing. I'm telling you, it is a different cold. It is a different environment, and that's the danger of playing from the West Coast, traveling thousands of miles all the way to the East Coast when you're playing in late October to November. So, realistically, their schedule is actually light compared to what they're going to be facing in the future. Listen,
I get it, but Oklahoma had to play in several snow games in Lincoln Riley's career, and they weren't just snow games; like they were blizzards when they had to go. I mean, one of them was in West Virginia one year, and so I mean, the thing is, I think
is the talent pool in the Big 12, was the talent pool better than the Big 10?
No, but I think we're overlooking the fact there are going to be years where the Big 10 gets 3 teams in. And if the playoffs expand, let's say I think it's after 2 years, if it expands to 16 teams, that just gives USC more of an opportunity. Trust me, they're not leaving a 9-2 USC out, or maybe even a 9-3 USC. They're going to give that team the benefit of the doubt because it's a brand, and they're going to want that brand in the playoffs.
So here's my thing, man. If they do 3 teams from the Big Ten, are you going to be able to beat Michigan? And we look at their schedule, and I know Michigan has some guys hurt. I know everybody's going to, scoff at Wisconsin. If they figure out their quarterback situation, they got some dudes in that secondary that I've been on record. Whenever Bama plays them, don't test Ricardo Holman. Just wherever he's at, don't test him. Right, that cat had 7 interceptions last year, a bunch of passes defended, probably one of the best cornerbacks in the nation that just flew under the radar. Man, I wish they would have gotten, if he would have entered the transfer portal, I'd have thrown an absolute party over here. Grandalf would have came over. Blaze would have came over. We'd have had a good time.
Yeah.
Didn't happen. But there are some teams out there that, like, you look at Wisconsin, they've got some players. You have Michigan, you have Penn State, Maryland.
Iowa has a top 5 defensive roster this year.
Iowa's got a really good secondary.
In college football for the past 10 years.
They got and Jans, to your point, their secondary is insane. Like,
Loaded.
they got some names in that secondary.
If they can stay healthy. In my opinion, I think they're better than Cooper DeJean.
Let's just pump the brakes, though. Iowa has the best defensive staff in the country, not the best coaching staff, because that offensive side of the ball is still atrocious.
And they won 10 games. Just based off of their special teams and defense alone. If they can, and now we can say that about them, if they just have an average offense, we could have been having a completely different conversation because their defense and their special teams carried them to 10 wins. I've never seen that before. It happened, though.
I mean, I've said that to Iowa, but again, it's going to be, can they? This next season is going to be real interesting with them as far as how fast you can implement a new offense, and is it going to be new?
Well, dang, where are we wrong?
I know, seriously.
He says we're hyping up where are we wrong? We haven't exactly said that they're.
If you don't think that the Big Ten is the second best conference in college football, then I'm sorry, I don't know what to tell you.
Bro, listen, man, listen. All this is wishful thinking, and I respect it. Brother, if you ain't got no defense, your team gonna suck. What y'all talking about, man? I don't give a damn about your offense and your Heisman quarterback and all this stuff. I saw that last year. I've seen this movie before. If you cannot stop the other team, you are going to lose on the road. Trust me on that. I don't care about your offensive coach. If you cannot stop anyone on the road, man, your team is going to lose, brother. Trust me. This ain't checkers. If you cannot stop anyone on the road, you're going to struggle.
Trust true.
Yeah, listen, that's that. And I like Miller Moss. I've been saying it, but you have questions. I like the defensive moves, just like I like LSU's defensive moves. Rome wasn't built in a day. You're going to have to rebuild that. And dang, you might not agree. The Big Ten is a good conference. It is the second best conference in football. It is the second best conference in football. And you didn't just get in USC. You got in Oregon. And right now, I don't know if I would look right now. I'd put Oregon over USC, right? So, like,
yes,
Dylan Gabriel.
It's not even a question. Yeah,
right. He says there's a drop off from Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, USC.
Do you see Oregon's talent levels right now? They are like poised. Look, everyone wants to give Dan Lanning like a hard time. Everyone knows I'm not an Oregon fan, right? Like, there's a reason for that. If you haven't watched this show, we've talked about that. These guys know. But I'll tell you this, man.
Safety for the Huskies, for those of you not aware, we have a guy. And let me get to this real fast, Jake, before you go. I don't want to go unnoticed. We have Patriot Life with the 30 saying, shout out to the crew. Happy Monday. Hope it's been a good one. Roll Tide, roll. Patriot Life, thank you so much. And then Adam say with the $20 saying the Big 12 has all mediocre or only good teams. The strength of schedule for every Big 12 team doesn't compare to Bama, Florida, or USC. So how can you place so much focus on record? P.S. Jake, just be aware of ghosts.
We're good today, Adam.
I think that's a fair question, Adam, and I'll answer it real quick because you're a brand that's a major brand. And if this is where I must admit, and I must eat crow because I forgot. I thought Lincoln, and this is still going to be, I thought Lincoln was getting paid like $7 to $8 million a year. And at that level, I'm like, okay, I can afford you sometime. But at $10 million plus all they've bought, all the buyout, that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. And dang Trojan, all the Big Ten schools have good defenses because they play Big Ten offenses. CJ Stroud is in the NFL, absolutely killing it. JJ McCarthy was just a first-round quarterback. Tualia Tagovailoa was a pretty darn good quarterback, right? You have you take a look at those Ohio State wide receivers, and then tell me about how you're going to stop that, right? Like the Ohio State, shout out Coach Mook. Ohio State has got a lot. Michigan's got a running game where they're going to run it right down your throat. Oregon is now there. They got a lot of talent, right? So you've got some teams out there to watch. Jake, go ahead and continue.
No, I was just saying, like, Oregon's going to be an interesting team because I do think like it took Dan Lanning a minute to get things in place, but I think he has some pieces in place. He did a good job recruiting. His transfer portal haul was one of the most impressive ones in the nation. Now, and he's good at getting these players all to mesh together, right? So I think you do have Oregon. I think Washington is going to continue to surprise people. Jed Fish is no joke, right? I'll tell you that, man. And what Jed Fish is doing is if you haven't seen what Washington's new theme is, come be a pro. Now, I know it seems like at Washington, that seems like, well, shouldn't you think that anywhere you go? Yeah, but it's really that the enticement, right? Which is hard to do in Washington, especially in that area. But here's what I'm trying to say is he takes Belichick's son and Pete Carroll's son, puts them on a roster. They run the offense and the defense, and you have Pete Carroll and Belichick and all these NFL dudes constantly walking around that have legendary careers. I mean, there's a lot to be interesting or be, I guess, watching with Washington and what they do. They also had a pretty decent transfer portal haul, and that's going to be another team. I think if they mesh together right, they have 2 quarterbacks right now on that roster who are freaking studs. And if they mesh it right, they could be very, very dangerous very quickly. So I think there's a lot of teams. Maryland is always sneaky. Rutgers is not a team that everyone should sleep on, right? Like,
Wisconsin has a great coach.
In Wisconsin, that's another, I mean, seriously, Wisconsin's another team you shouldn't sleep on. So, I mean, you have a number of things right here, right, with how these different teams play out. And yeah, it might not be the Big Ten that we're all used to seeing. That's what I'm trying to say with that. I think it's going to be a little different. The quarterback play is going to be taken up a notch, put it that way. I mean, not saying it wasn't before. There was the teams that had it, but I think you're going to see a little more fireworks instead of just more of this kind of head-to-head battle that you've always had the Big Ten scene.
And if I may, before because gentlemen, this was supposed to be a quick topic. Like, this is one of the things, guys.
Damn.
When we get this round table, the knights of the table in the chat and us, you can say we're a lot of things, but you must also say we're thorough, right? We were going to quickly talk about USC. It's been an hour and 5 minutes, and we're dissecting their schedule, their coaches, their rooms, their competition, the whole 9 yards. Right. Call us a lot, but we are thorough, right? Lynn with the $20 saying this may be the most that USC has been talked about since Pete was the coach. USC will not win. You're probably not wrong, right? Dang, I'm telling you, sleep on those Big Ten corners if you want, man. I'm just telling you, watch some of those Big Ten corners. Coach Sean, you were about to say something.
LSU lost. Michigan on the road lost. Wisconsin, you might pull that out. Minnesota on the road, that might be another loss if you're not careful. Penn State, you got them at home. That could possibly be a loss. You got Rutgers, possibly a win. UCLA, Notre Dame, and somebody else. I can't read my own handwriting. But case in point, Washington. This team could possibly be 7-5, 8-4 at best. I mean, if you go 8-4, looking at this schedule, I guess for you guys, that would be a win, right? In this year, I suppose. But with no defense, if the defense doesn't make astronomical improvement, you could lose some of these games that you think you're going to win, right? You think you're going to go into Rutgers and win that game, right?
Coach Sean, let me ask you a quick question.
Yeah.
Well, when Lincoln Riley first got hired, what was the expectation by USC fans? What did they all think he was going to do?
Natty.
10, 11 games.
10, 11 games.
Every year. That's what we had to hear from. For the last 2 years, that's exactly what we had to hear from. Now all of a sudden, let's just be realistic. Let's be realistic because this is the way it should be. No, your expectation for Lincoln Riley coming in was that he was going to win 11 games. It didn't matter the quarterback. It didn't matter who the quarterback was. We kept hearing the defense was going to suck. Offensively, they were going to be all-time great, and they were going to continuously win 10 games. Even last year, when we all tried to tell them, even with Caleb, that your defense was going to stink, every USC fan thought they were going to go ahead and potentially win the Pac-12 championship or at least get to the game. Now all of a sudden, it's 8 wins. That should be where our goal should be. No, you got to keep that same energy. You got to keep that same energy. You got one of the presumed top 10 coaches in college football. The 2023 class, you had the 6th best recruiting class. You had 2 top 10 transfer portal classes. You got to keep that same energy. Keep that same energy. Because let me tell you something. Northwestern is you're telling me you're on the same spectrum as Northwestern, and Northwestern's projected with that same total line after when they had 2 wins a couple years ago. You're telling me you're on the same spectrum as a rebuilding Wisconsin team? I don't know. I would me personally, I would feel uncomfortable if a coach that I'm paying all that money and tied for 4th in college football, if the standard is 8 wins. That's just me.
And don't look now. But UCLA has a great coaching staff. The interest is peaking at UCLA that they hadn't had in a few years. They actually have been doing better in recruiting without Chip Kelly than they did with him. So don't look now, but that game just got a lot harder.
No doubt about it. And Trojan, we're keeping that same energy, my man. Listen, we know it's not we know it's not Nick Saban, but y'all's presumption with Lincoln was that you were going to win a natty. You didn't make the playoffs. Right?
100.
Like, you haven't made the playoffs. The guy that Bama just hired just played in a national championship game. He inherited a team that was 4-8. So I guess my question is Lincoln Riley had had a coach. Dang Trojan, I got a question for you. Here it is. Lincoln Riley had a quarterback that just went number 1 in the draft, won a Heisman, and he inherited a team that was fairly analogous to what DeBoer inherited at Washington. DeBoer inherited a 4-8 program. The first year at DeBoer went 11-2. The second year he went 14-1. Why did DeBoer make a national championship game before Lincoln made a playoff? Why? Dang, you're gonna have to give me that answer, because every team out there had access to guys that had an extra year of eligibility. USC as well, right?
Kalen DeBoer's just a better developer than Lincoln Riley. Let's just say it the way it is. Like, he, outside of the quarterback, he probably develops his players better than Riley does.
Well, 100%. I mean, I think that's I think that's a great transition point too into like what Alabama's even doing right now, to be honest, because we could sit here and debate USC all day, but shit, dude, USC, until you guys do something cool, I'm not even interested anymore. Like, it's crazy. You know what I'm saying? Like, those guys it's been so wild with their USC used to be, you look at the history, you look what Pete Carroll did. They were amazing, right? There's no excuse for where they're at right now. Like, they did a terrible job of their hiring. They've done a terrible job of managing like what resources they did have, because Pete Carroll gave them plenty of resources. But now it's like, okay, you have a chance now with Lincoln Riley to make this difference. And if this defensive staff does not step up, then yeah, I mean, 100% what's going to happen with Riley. But when it comes down to DeBoer, like, that's I wouldn't even put them in the same dang conversation, because you look at what DeBoer's done. I mean, dude, that guy's 109 and what, like 14? Like, I mean, it's crazy, right? And you look at his development of players. I mean, there's an amazing article that just came out again. And Ty, this was the same guy who wrote the article on Caden Proctor, Alex Scarborough, right? And he wrote this article just on Kalen DeBoer and what is the trick behind how he's so good. And you have to have a coach that players buy into. You have to have this philosophy that players buy into. And his philosophy isn't this crazy, because everyone's like, is he Saban? Who is he going to be? I'm going to be honest. I think Brent Venables has the same type of mindset, a different type of energy, but the same type of, I guess, aura about him, right? Where the players go there and they want to, the coaches, the players, they want to be the very best because they care so much about what he's doing and who he is, right? Like, this genuine, sincere person. Not saying like that Saban that wasn't it, but Saban's a hard ass. Like, he's like a general. He's like it's like, you know, he's going to let you know, man. Like, yeah, we've all seen the clips. I mean, he has a different type of energy. There's multiple types of energy that work, but how do you take what I guess you have and utilize it and maximize its potential as far as your style? And I don't know, we go back, I don't think you look at Lincoln Riley and necessarily he has that, right? Like, that's
Dang Trojan, the rule of debate state that if you make an assertion, you provide the evidence. We're all on a live stream right now talking. If you have an assertion, you provide the evidence. That's the rules of debate. That's the rules of analysis. So listen, I'll be happy to listen to it. But my question is why couldn't Lincoln Riley get that same level of buy-in then?
Yeah.
Right? Like, at a certain point, it just becomes, okay, so what you're telling me is Kalen DeBoer utilized what was legal and every team in college football could do to make a national championship. By the way, one of only a few teams, I think one of only 2 teams since the college football college football playoffs were created to win a playoff game without having the blue chip ratio. TCU and Kalen DeBoer. Only 2 teams, TCU and Washington, the only 2 teams that have won a playoff game without satisfying the blue chip ratio.
Also, think about this. Think about this.
Coach.
USC and Miami has very similar traits, right? You have 2 coaches who came in with high expectations for these fan bases of memories of old, right? You have great NIL packages for these kids. You know, you're doing what you're supposed to do in NIL. You're getting the kids. You're getting the players, right? Your fan support sucks. I'm just going to call it what it is. Your stadiums are empty. One stadium is 40 minutes from Coral.
What did Damani Jackson say about it, Coach?
Like Damani Jackson was flabbergasted and elated at our spring game, right? So your fan support sucks, right? And at the end of the day, you are sleeping giants because, you know, when you're good, everything's great. But when you suck, brother, it's a lot of things to do in Miami and LA than go to a college football game. This is facts.
So, and this might be too off topic, and if it is, let me know. But do you think USC should be the leader in creating smaller stadiums? Because I mean, I don't think there's going to be.
That's actually a hell of a conversation.
Because, well, Northwestern's having a smaller stadium, right? Yeah. But it fits. Like, 'cause Northwestern's not going to pack 50,000 people every game, but like you can create just as loud and a great as an environment with 30,000 people. Look at the Big 12 schools that do it. So it's like, would a powerhouse like USC benefit from going to a smaller stadium and trying to create a better game day environment that way? Because it would also increase the value of USC Trojans football.
I think Miami it would better than USC, because when USC is good, that thing is rocking. Even when Miami is good, it's not rocking. Can you imagine? Miami, to me, should have took the blueprint of Louisville. Years ago, Louisville had a tiny little stadium. They built it on campus. It was small. But you know what Louisville did? They expanded. They kept getting bigger and bigger. Can you imagine Miami if they had a stadium called the Eye of the Hurricane, somewhere near Coral Gables, right? Yeah. Didn't make the ticket prices. So, I mean, for God's sakes, man, these guys had a spring game and they only invited their rich alumni. Fans had to, it wasn't open to fans. It was like 50 people there. So I think with Miami, their problem is deeper rooted with their administration. I think they got a bunch of weirdos running their school, private institution, lots of money, right? USC to me they're just a hair away, man, from getting this thing correct, right? When they're good, LA popping. When they're bad, like you said, PG, nobody gives a damn, right? I don't know what the hell is going on in Miami. I think it's deeper at Miami. It's something. I can't put my finger on it, but yeah, I do understand. I think that would help both universities, though, to your point.
Trojan, here's the thing. How are we going to bet this? Because USC last year averaged 66,000 per game in attendance. I'm going to read to you some of the top. Michigan averaged 109,000, Penn State 108,000, Ohio State 103,000, Tennessee 101,000, Texas 101,000, LSU 100,000, Alabama 100,000, A&M 99,000. Like, it's not even close, my brother.
You would have to go percentage of capacity, but man, USC is not going to be top 5, even if you did break it down in percentage of capacity, for a long time. Like, those Big Ten schools, like, even against crappy teams, that stadium's full to capacity. Yeah. You're not topping out these Big Ten schools. That's what I'm saying. USC might benefit going to a smaller stadium. And I'm kind of against Oklahoma expanding their stadium. They have to remove 5 rows across our entire stadium to make the sidelines bigger per SEC guidelines. I don't want them to add those seats back because, 1, it makes our ticket value better, but 2, we don't need a 100,000 seat stadium. Like, you don't need to expand any bigger. Like, go smaller, make a better game day experience, put more time and effort into that.
Here's something that might excite you. If we look at capacity percentage, PG, y'all, I think, have averaged 104%.
Yeah, I bet us
So-
and Nebraska are right up there.
Appalachian State is 115%, Colorado 105% this past year, Oklahoma at 104, Oregon State 104, Kansas State 103, Oregon 103, TCU 102, Utah 102, Michigan 102. James
And a lot of
Madison-
those schools have small stadiums. Look at that.
Yeah.
Oklahoma
Well-
might be the outlier on that list for big stadiums.
Here's the thing, gentlemen. We are an hour and 19 minutes into this conversation. We need to transition because we've got some great news we need to talk about. Bama had a massive recruiting weekend, and boy, oh boy, ton of talented visitors, and it is starting to pop on the recruiting trail. Gentlemen, I have pulled up the recruiting rankings. 24/7 Sports has Alabama as the number 3 team in the nation with 13 commits. To put that in perspective, Ohio State is 1 with 14. Notre Dame is 2 with 21. Clemson is 4 with 13. USC at 5 with 13 commits. We jump over to on 3. They have Alabama at number 5 with a really high recruit rank. In fact, of the top 5, the 3rd highest average recruit rank. Alabama's recruiting really, really well. And PG, I know you heard it, but for all the guys who are the Bama fans on this panel, all we heard this offseason was that Kalen DeBoer can't recruit. Well, if he can't recruit, get me some more of that. Get me some more of can't recruit. Because Alabama is killing it on the recruiting trail right now. Gentlemen, this is the other thing we need to talk about, and then we'll go right down the table from Coach Jay, Jake, Coach Sean, PG, and then I'll top it off. Alabama is top 5 in the nation wherever you look in recruiting, with a staff that outside of Roach, outside of Gillespie, and outside of the supplementary staff, they have less than 6 months relationships established, and they are killing it on the trail. Guys, talk to me about Chuck McDonald. Talk to me about Michael Carroll. Talk to me about Alabama recruiting. Coach Jay, we're going to start with you and then just go straight down the line.
Well, first of all, yeah, I mean, Ty, I think you pointed right in the head. I mean, we still can't recruit. We still have a coach that doesn't know the area. We still have a coaching staff that's from the West Coast and from the North, from the Northeast, and that doesn't know any of the Southern regions. We still don't have any of those. We still don't have any of those factors. So Ty, I have no idea why you're asking me, man. I don't even know why you're asking all the Bama fans this panel, because we don't know what we're talking about. Apparently, we just don't know what we're talking about when we came up here and said that, hey, Kalen DeBoer, we think he can do a good job. And here's the funny part. My expectation, I wasn't even expecting a top 5 class this year.
You and me both said top 10.
I said, you get me top 10, I'm good. I'm good to go. And I think that you're not going to see a push until late into the season. I think around around September, October time is when I think you can really start to make your push. Matter of fact, ladies and gentlemen, if we're just comparing this to the last couple years where Nick Saban, he didn't really make his late push until like around July and August. That's when the recruits really started to get these commits. He's doing a better job than Saban, believe it or not. He's doing a better job than Saban the last couple years in terms of this point in recruiting. I'm not saying that DeBoer is going to finish with number 1 class. I'm telling you at this point, he's doing a better job than Saban is. And it's very, very impressive, the recruits that we're getting so far. Literally off the gate, we're already filling the holes. I mean, we got quarterback. We got quarterback. That potentially was going to be a hole next year. We got a potential 5-star by the end of the year. You take linebacker was going to be huge in terms of depth. In terms of depth, we're able to kind of fill in that role so far. We take a look at the secondary. We're able to kind of cover ground there by getting the secondary. We got running backs. We got interior offensive linemen. Of course, with the newest one with Michael Carroll, 6'6", 315. By the way, I've been to Dalestown, Pennsylvania. Dalestown, Pennsylvania, man. Let me tell you something. If y'all ever rode through Pennsylvania before, it is. I mean, besides Pittsburgh and Philadelphia, for the most part, guys, a lot of these small cities and small towns, these are small hick towns. I'm just gonna say it. Like these towns, man, are like you would never even heard of like Hershey, Pennsylvania, where Joe Biden's from. Like you will never ever, like, these are old school 1950, 1960s type of style towns. Like it's crazy. So he comes from a very, very small school, very, very kind of small town, small background, but he's a giant, 6'7", 315 pounds. And for the most part, guys, I'm telling you, the type of tackles that we're recruiting, we're getting these Deuce Billow, like we're getting these Bullows, we're getting these Rosengarten sort of tackles, we're getting these Troy Fautano type sort of tackles. They're either big, a little slim, but with quick feet, or they're fat, or they're very, very fast with quick feet, right? With great lateral movement, right? We're like the type of tackle, we're not getting these 325, 340, 350 behemoths, and that's not what we're trying to go for. We're trying to go for agility. We're trying to go for quickness, right? You know, this offensive lineman is going to require a lot of movement from our center position all the way down the tackle. And so I really, really like Carroll a lot. He's quick, man. Again, just a little raw, right? There's some things he needs to work on in his game, but he's an athlete. This dude is a hell of an athlete. I think he's actually I think he's a track guy too. I think I saw that he was a track guy too. He actually kind of ran some track, and he wasn't throwing, right? He's running. So, and he's actually a mile, right? Believe it or not, he actually runs I think he runs the 800 and the 800 too. Which, if you guys have ever run 800 guys on a track, I don't care what level it is. That sucks. I hate long distance running. So that's really, really impressive. Exactly. That's a lot of cardio. So listen, Alabama's killing it. I'm even a little flabbergasted just based off what everyone's kind of telling me that we were gonna suck in recruiting. So every time we keep picking up a kid, I'm like, really? We picked up 2 kids in less than 2 weeks. Oh, 2 top 100 kids in 2 weeks. That's pretty impressive. I didn't think that. I mean, if you were to ask me in February, everyone thought that my program was dead. Everyone thought that recruiting for my program was gonna be hell, and that Ole Miss was gonna out recruit us and stuff like that. So I'm shocked. I'm shocked by this. I don't know how you guys feel.
Jake?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's I'm going to be honest. I kind of expected it to go this way, maybe not as early as they are, but I think you look at DeBoer and the staff he puts around him. And then also, I think it goes in, again, if you haven't read the article, there's an amazing article that just came out. Alex Scarborough, he does a really good job with his articles in general from 247 Sports, but and that's Bama 247, right? And he did a really good job of highlighting what's unique about Kalen DeBoer, right? And it's very much not just the standpoint of how do you balance like perfection and this focus, right? Of he's such a detail person, but also this genuine like humility. It's a very hard thing to do when you're at such a high level. And so I think that's the thing about him is he is just a truly genuine dude. I mean, Courtney Morgan talks about the way in the article, he talks about at one point sending him a text about a book he's reading. And Kalen responds, says, "Oh, sorry, man, I was doing this, and this. Yeah, no, that's gold for sure." And then he says, "By the way, how's your day going?" Courtney Morgan goes, he doesn't have to ask me how my day is going. He's busy as hell. He has a bunch of stuff he's doing. But the thing about him is he takes the time. Right? He takes the time and he truly says, "Hey, I want to know about you." And I think, and it's real because a lot of people can ask that question, but really it's like, "Hey, this is blah, 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 this is what's going on." And then you tune it out. I think he does a really good job of identifying people who also have that same sort of commitment that he has. And you're seeing it early on because I think it's not just players, but their families feel comfortable. And that's a huge, huge part. Right. And you look at, most recent commit, okay, Chuck McDonald, stud. We've talked a lot about him in general. But he's 6'1", probably about 190, 195 right now. He'll end up being, I bet you he gets in there. We've seen what Bama does to their players. He'll probably end up being between 205 to 215 eventually. I think he can play any position, but I think he's a safety. When I look at him, I definitely see him as a safety, one of those 3 safety positions. I like the way Chuck plays. He plays with aggression. He has really good eyes. His footwork's phenomenal. His hips are really good, and he's loose with his hips. And me and Coach Sean actually brought this up, but you know, the way he catches and positions his body, depending on the type of coverage he's playing, right? He does a really good job, and he catches the inside hip really well, where he can shadow and mirror the wide receiver. He's a very technically sound player. Now we're used to seeing that with modern day athletes, especially their DBs. They produce studs. They do a very, very good job. But I'll tell you right now, the other guy we look at who is exciting, because it's nice to get that piece that I think, man, I think is huge, is continuing to build on our offensive line. And you look at Mike Carroll, man, like big bulldozer Mike, because he truly is a road grader. He's that type of guy you want. He very, very good feet. He has good bend. I mean, he comes from like athletic genes. His dad played college football. His mom, I believe she played college basketball, I think it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, his dad Penn State, and I think his mom was at Michigan. So I mean, he's a big dude. He can move for a big dude, and he's strong. He's extremely strong for a young guy. You know, and that again goes into relationship space, because he's had that relationship with Coach Cap for quite some time, right? When Cap's over at Michigan State and even at Baylor. So you look at what these guys are doing, and they're utilizing the fact that, hey, okay, we're a new staff here at Bama, but we're real. Like, we're real. This is what we're showing you. This is our philosophy. These are our, you know, our pillars of what we put our program on, and we want you to adhere to these. So, I mean, it's impressive as far as what they're doing. I think you look at some of the other guys, I wouldn't be surprised if we do see like a Dawson Merritt, Mal Waldrop. There's been a lot of talk about Dejon Lee. Obviously, that's another would be a huge pickup. And this running back that was here, who is another stud, is Shakai Mills Knight. Yeah, he's a 3-star, but go watch his film. I don't know how long he's going to be a 3-star for. The guy's big. I mean, he's 6'1", 215 to 220 right now. Like that, and he can run. And he puts his foot in the ground and he runs. He has good vision, and he moves very well laterally. Like, I mean, that's one of those guys maybe who just hasn't been looked at enough and evaluated enough, who's probably doesn't have the ranking he's going to finish with at the end of the year. But you look at all the guys are starting to pick up. And I've said this before, we needed a quarterback, right? I think that Keelan Russell commitment is absolutely huge. I think that's a momentum changer. I think we're going to start seeing the wide receivers. You're probably going to see, it'd be interesting to see in PG, you'll have some good insight on this. It'll be interesting to see the battle with Ty Haywood between Oklahoma and Alabama. I'm still, people are now saying Texas is getting heavily involved. I saw that rumor pop up with NIL money, so I don't know how
he's got a really good relationship with Kyle Flood, and he's talked about that before.
Yeah, so that's going to be interesting. I mean, he would be a great one to grab, but I mean, he's a stud. We still have guys. I mean, one of the most exciting things, I think, you look at Ivan Taylor, the Notre Dame commit, who's one of the top safeties in the nation. You know, he has a lot to say about I just saw the post come out of Naeem Offord posting all this stuff of his pictures of him at Bama on social media, which he hasn't necessarily, sounds like, done before. And people are starting to throw question marks of that. That's going to be a long-term battle, if it even is one. But you also, one of the more exciting guys that I know is coming into town here, I think the 21st, is Ty Jackson. And that dude, from a standpoint of linebacker, is an absolute – do you want to talk about long, fast, athletic, the guys that Womack wants on defense? Because offensively, we know what they're going to go after, right? We've kind of already have an idea because everyone's really dug into DeBoer's offense. But I think on Womack's side, what is he looking for? He's looking for that fast, that long and lean, that those dudes like that can play with speed and space, right? That's what they're doing with that defense. I love what they're doing. And I love that thought process of what they're looking for. And I think Ty Jackson fits that mold. I think they're going to go after him hard to put a kind of a period on their linebacking group. And I think from there, that's where you see that maybe die down a little bit, how much they go after linebackers from there. So,
Coach Sean.
I mean, for me, it's a little. It's actually what Jake said and what Coach Jan said. These guys are good kids. I mean, I see the trolls talking about. You can always tell the people that don't watch film, they just like trolling. You know what I mean? When you watch film on these kids, like Chuck, if you know what you're watching, you could tell that they train the kid on Q route a lot. You can tell the kid is fast. The kid run a 10.84, I was told. I mean, the kid play with great leverage. He tackles well. The film don't lie. I mean, people can troll and say whatever about a star and all of that stuff. Watch the film if you know what you're watching. The kid is a ball hawk. He plays with great leverage, near arm, near shoulder, all that stuff that some kids don't know as a defensive back. He knows. The kid has been schooled with very well. You can definitely tell modern day has great coaches. When you look at Michael Carroll, kid got great feet. He's strong. And the run game, he's dominant. He's dominant. This kid is a mover, man. He moves people. And listen, I got a partner that coach at Carmel in Waukegan that told me this kid, when you look at the stars and things of that nature, this kid didn't camp a lot. A lot of people didn't know about this kid for real, right? This kid his focus was wrestling. It wasn't football for a portion of time. So this is one of those late bloomer kids. Kid can move, very aggressive. And if you're not careful, this kid could play defense. He's just that athletic, man. So a lot of these trolls don't know, man. I don't really pay them no mind because you clearly don't know, right? Michael's an awesome kid, man. Awesome kid that with the right coaching, he play a little high, like all high school offensive linemen do.
Yeah.
Right. You get him into camp, you teach him how to use his lower body, his core. You teach him how to pass set, use his hands. This kid is going to be absolutely dominant. I'm telling you, I'd much rather have a kid like that can grow than a 5-star kid that's peaked out in high school and not going to get any better. Right. To the troll in the chat, he clearly don't understand that. It's about development, man. That's how you win championships. Go ask Michigan. It's about developing your people, keeping them in the program. That's how you churn out first-round picks. That's how you churn out trophies, right? Don't get caught up in the stars and things like that. It's great to have them. Don't get me wrong. It's great to have them. But if you're not developing your kids, who gives a damn? Go ask Texas A&M. The bottom line is you got to be able to put your kids on the field. You got to be able to identify kids that fit what you want to do, just like what Jake just said, right? And this coaching staff have absolutely done that. They've identified the kids that fit what they want to do, and it works. Last time I checked, Washington played for a national championship last year and tied us, if I'm not mistaken, with the amount of NFL draft picks in the first round or total that we had. So miss me with all that star this, SMU that. You just don't watch film. You think watching film is putting on a VHS test. It's scratching your ass. You know what I mean? You don't know nothing about no damn film, boy. You know what I mean? So I don't pay no attention to these trolls in the chat. That one in particular that follows every Bama chat. I enjoy you. I actually enjoy you because I say this again. I'll end my quote with this. So PG can get his. If you follow every Bama chat, know every Bama player, you read Bama articles,
know the Bama panelists,
exactly, then you, my friend, by sheer definition, are a Bama fan. Roll Tide.
Dude, real quick before we jump to PG, Adam said earlier something that was interesting. He said that DeBoer got outcoached by Michigan staff. That you were this last year in the national championship. So wrong. That did not get outcoached. 100%. Like it, all you got to do is go back, watch that film. Just watch Michael Penix was off. Like the entire they should have won that game. Even with Michigan going up as much as they did, they should have won that game. So no, there was no out coaching. It was literally just players not stepping up to the moment. And that happens. So
PG.
Yeah, so Kalen DeBoer, Alabama recruiting. Yeah, Alabama ain't going anywhere, unfortunately. As an Oklahoma fan, I hate this. I hate to say this because y'all have taken 2 linebackers that we really wanted this year. I believe the guy, Jaden Harmon from Rome, Georgia.
yeah.
Oh my God, he is. speeding missile.
Katrina.
Yeah.
So I told you about this kid. No, and then Luke Metz, like
Yeah.
Oklahoma offered Luke Metz. We were in there like swimwear about to win this recruitment, and then Alabama came out of nowhere and took it from us. So you know what? Like I'm still not liking Alabama recruiting right now. But no, like I'm curious to see how the staff recruits post Nick Saban. Like I know Nick Saban just retired, so like I think there's still this allure around Alabama. But what happens if Alabama only wins 7 or 8 games this year? Then what are recruits going to start thinking, right? That's what I want to watch. I want to watch, okay, what happens if they don't continue to be Alabama? Like, are these recruits going to continue to try to flood there? Or are they going to kind of take a step back and you're going to kind of see Alabama fall into that like 7 to maybe 12 range in the recruiting rankings? That's kind of what I'm watching. I think this year is going to be a defining moment for this staff and what they're going to be able to do on the recruiting trail. But Kalen DeBoer, he develops really well. So he might not need all of the 5-star talent that Nick Saban was able to pull in, right? He might be able to kind of say, hey, like, I like this 3-star out in BFE, North Dakota, nowhere. Oklahoma fans know who I'm talking about. Or looking at a kid in Georgia who's unranked and say, hey, I want that kid. And then they end up coming to Alabama being a superstar. So I'm just curious to see what this season's going to turn out to be and then kind of evaluate what Alabama recruiting is going to be. But Alabama's 4th right now in terms of average recruiting, like the recruiting score, like 93 point something. They're only behind like Oregon and I think Ohio State and one other school. So, I mean, they're continuing the tradition that they had with Alabama or with Nick Saban, but we just got to see. I think this takes time. But if you're an Alabama fan, I think you're excited. I think you're excited that you're not seeing a slowdown. Right, you're just seeing them continue to pick it up, and I do wonder if Kalen DeBoer will get better offensive talent than Nick Saban had ever gotten to Alabama. That's another thing I'm looking at because he's done pretty well with it.
Yeah, very fair. And listen, I think when I look at Alabama, if you're asking me like I think 9-3, when I look at that schedule is like the floor. Right, because I have a lot of questions about LSU, that defense. Jalen Milroe comes back, one of the highest QBRs in the nation, and for the first time, he works with actual quarterback coaches. Right? You look at the wide receiver room, the number 1 wide receiver Alabama has is in the NFL draft, Burton. Second wide receiver was Isaiah Bond, who goes to Texas, but you still have Kobe Prentice. You still have Kendrick Law. You get Ryan Williams, who has a higher upside than any wide receiver Alabama had last year. Dare I say he should be going into his senior year of high school. He's got a higher upside than any Alabama wide receiver had last year. Stepping in as a true freshman should be a senior in high school. That guy is so talented, right? So talented. Plus you have Jeremy Bernard. I think the offensive line, you look right now, Pro Football Focus just rated the top 10 interior offensive linemen in the nation. Alabama has 3 of them. So I think right now 9-3 is the floor. Defensive secondary, I think if you're going to ask what's the question about Alabama, that's where I would probably start the question, right? And I think that any Bama fan will tell you as excited as they are. If you are to ask the question, that's a fair question. Redmayne asks, how good is Bama's running game going to be this coming up year? I think it's going to be insane, Redmayne. You have an offensive line that's very good at run blocking, a run scheme that's going to involve more pin and pull. You have 2 5-stars plus Jam Miller plus Hill, who is just who flew up recruiting boards, plus Kevin Riley. It's all a bunch of top 100 running backs. And like I said, 2 5-stars there. So yeah, it's going to be super interesting, but let's focus in on what Alabama is doing recruiting. Chuck McDonald is a huge win. That guy has so much versatility, right? He is a physical defensive back that can play outside corner. I think he can play inside, right? And that right there, I think, is going to be an incredible thing to watch. What he continues to develop into. And Coach Sean, you made a great boomer. How's Bama secondary going to look this year? Right after I said that's the question. I love Boomer, man. I love Boomer.
Would there be any question about the Alabama secondary if Caleb Downs was still there? Would there be any question?
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah, 100%. I think that cornerback, the cornerbacks are going to probably, I don't think there's questions necessarily from like the the safeties with your, with your Husky or even your Rover, right? Or your strong safety. But I think the cornerback aspect, just from a depth standpoint, that's where I think the question is. I don't think people necessarily are questioning like Damani Jackson, right? I think that even though everyone has their own take on how Damani played at USC, I think you have Damani, who's an injured Damani at USC and in a scheme that does not fit him at all, and then gives him zero confidence, because you can't sit there and not get a pass rush and give a quarterback 6-7 seconds to throw the ball. You know what I'm saying? Like that's impossible. I don't care how good of a DB you are, right? So I think Damani steps in and plays a huge role. But then from there, I like Deshaun Brown from Wake Forest. I think he's going to be very good and aggressive. But I do think that, the question mark is the youth aspect at the cornerback and that depth. That's why I keep saying, if you are a cornerback recruit right now, this would be a time frame you would want to come in, because you're competing with similar age difference, right, for playing time. If that's your mindset, right, you want to play. But if it's harder, right, if you're competing against seniors and juniors for playing time, then you're probably going to sit for a while, unless like you are Caleb Williams. You know what I mean? So, but I do think that cornerback aspect is the biggest question now. I think we have the D line though to mitigate that, the bumps in the road that you'll see. But it's you're going to see bumps. So
y'all's defense, or the Alabama defensive line's real. I was talking to an OU football player this weekend when I was at the Brent Venables camps, and I was talking to him about, hey, like, what games do you guys expect to struggle with? And he said Alabama, and I was like, why? Like because a lot of us aren't seeing that. Like, a lot of us expect Oklahoma to potentially win that game in Norman, and he's like, oh, that Alabama defensive line, it's crazy. And I was like,
it's actually ridiculous.
So like the players really respect that Alabama defensive line this year.
Yeah. I mean, and their depth is, this defense, it's meant, right. It's very much, very similar to what you're seeing a lot of people do, but Venables runs a 3-3-5, right? This is a 4-2-5, 3-4 nickel. Granted, there's so many same looks. And the thing I like about Womack, that I also give the same credit to Zach Alley, is the aggression in which they call and the way they disguise their stunts, their blitzes, right? And I think you also need that depth, and that's where Bama has on the D line. They have the depth to rotate, where you will get those guys staying fresh and continuing to bring pressure throughout the game. So,
how do we feel about Milroe being paired with DeBoer this year? Do we feel like Milroe takes the next step with him?
Oh, God, yeah. And I'm going to tell you why. There was zero creativity, PG, from Alabama's offense last year. And listen, I'm not saying Milroe is perfect. Milroe was a first-year starter. He made first-year starter mistakes. There were times where he held the ball too long, took a sack. There were times where the offensive line let him down. There were times where did y'all see that video? Even ESPN people are commenting on it, saying that Peter Burns, who works for ESPN, quote tweeted this video and said, okay, this is funny. Seth couldn't snap the ball to Jalen Milroe to save his life. I went back and watched that Texas game. It was actually insane how many snaps Milroe picked up off the ground. And
it was every game, man. Every game.
Every game. We got a coach right here, and we got a former college football player, and two former college football players. Gentlemen, how dumb was it, that argument of, oh, well, it was Milroe's cadence? Well, then was Bryce Young's cadence bad too? Like, you have to get the ball from point A to point B. I don't care if it's a post. It doesn't matter. The ball goes from you to quarterback. And for Ryan Day to be like, it was cadence, that's inconsequentially stupid. Like,
Bro,
go ahead.
Cadence affects snap count, not affect the trajectory of the damn ball. Cadence affects you hiking the ball too soon or too late. Yeah. Cadence doesn't affect you bowling the ball to me instead of hiking it. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, to answer PG's question, I think this offense is going to fit Jalen Milroe like a glove, and I'll tell you exactly why. Last year, these guys were running plays with no avail. Ty gave me the name of I think, Ty, you called it
foundational play.
Yes. We had no foundational play, bro. Listen, I've called offenses for years in high school. Listen, no foundational play. When it's 3rd and 1 and they playing zone and you running 5 wide and you got this kid out there practically telling this kid, find a receiver. They know the mesh route coming. The linebackers ain't biting. They drop it into their correct zones. They're stopping that. So all this man is thinking about, let me just take off running, right? You give this guy no logical play calls for most of the season. Now, the LSU game was a little different because they didn't have a lot of talent. The scheme they ran sucked. Kentucky didn't know whether they wanted to come up and stop Jalen Milroe or drop back and play coverage. So he dominated them. When they came up, you make them pay by throwing it. When they stayed in coverage, he took off running. Very simple what they done. But when you got this guy, we running, Adam Lamparillo made question to it when he said we ran all these pre-snap motions out in the flats. Michigan didn't even fall for that. You know why they didn't fall for that? Because they had great film study. They knew we wasn't going to throw it to the running back out in the flat. They knew it. They don't give a damn who come in pre-snap. They don't care. That means your offensive coordinator or your offensive group is predictable, right? You got out-coached in that game in that aspect. You didn't do anything to pull me off my square. We're going to play our base defense, and we're going to stop you with that because we know you can't do nothing else. At that point, your offensive coordinator is behind the 8 ball, man. With this offense, it's about picking on the safety. I've said this 1,000 times. This offense is great because they pick on your safety. They pick on him. They'll post corner you to death with this offense, man. If your safety comes up to make the play, they're going to post on a post. They're going to post corner you to death. The post corner is one of those routes in college to me that is almost unstoppable if you have the right quarterback. Ask Michael Penix. If your safety plays on the hash, they're going to pick on this guy. Jalen can throw that route. Believe me. They're going to extenuate his run game. They're going to make you defend that. We had games where teams didn't have to worry about Jalen. Let's just spy him. You know, he's not going to kill us with his run. We'll give up a little play here or there, right? You want to make teams prepare for Jalen Milroe. You want to make teams spend time to stop his legs, right? You want his legs to be a real threat. The passing game they run is very, 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 very. It fit Jalen. It fit Jalen. I like this passing game because it's logical play calling. It is. We're going to make your safeties play back far. We're going to make you give us some depth. And if you give us some depth, Justice Haynes and Jam Miller is going to kill you. This is a straight up fact. Football is not very difficult, man. What makes Steve Sarkisian so great, right? He take what you give him and then he busts your head during the game, right? If you're going to inch your safety up so much, he's going to run a tight end down the seam and run right by you. Ask Caleb Downs, right? In football is not 3 plus 3, it's 1 plus 1, man, right? We need a logical play caller. We hadn't had a logical play caller since Mike Loxley left, since Sark left. This guy is going to pin and pull you to death, counter you to death, trap you to death, and make you defend the full football field. And a lot of teams can't do that.
I think another thing too. Oh, well, go ahead, Jake.
No, you're good. Go ahead, Jay.
Now I was about to say, I think another thing that is going to make Jalen Milroe better is because we're actually going to use an offense, especially with our receivers that are pretty much going to spread you out horizontally instead of vertically. There was actually somebody did an all 22 film study on Ryan Grubb and why they're excited about Ryan Grubb. Well, I didn't even know about this, but Washington used 30 different variations of screens. They used 30 different variations with tight ends, with receivers, with running backs were included. They had a fullback that was included in the screen one time. This is going to be an offense that is going to be a lot easier, and the weight's going to be lifted off his shoulders. The ball's going to be out extremely quickly. We're going to be running a lot of short intermediate routes, but it's not going to be predictable like a lot of our receiving concepts were, with, like Coach Sean was saying, a lot of the pre-snap motion. And you could just tell what the hell was going to be. You're not going to deliver to the running back to the flat. There were certain tight end sort of concepts that Michigan knew. Amari Niblack's going in motion, or Amari Niblack is lined up here in the slot, or they got him wide, or they got one of these, or they're running two double tight end sets. and the double tight end sets here. Like we know exactly what's coming. We're not gonna pay attention. We're gonna highlight these two receivers because we know for the most part that Jalen Milroe likes. We know that Jalen Milroe likes to go there. These are his two primary reads, and if anything, we all know he's either not going to see the full view of the field, or the offense just isn't tailor made for Jalen Milroe to get to those reads in a quick hurry. That's why I'm saying I don't think it was. This is why I'm saying, guys, I don't think it's all on Jalen Milroe. I think his development because one of the biggest complaints is how the hell are you not looking for your third read or that running back, your check down. I don't even know if the offense was even tailor made for him to even go to those sort of reads. I think that because of Jalen Milroe's development and what Tom Reese was doing, I think in a way they were kind of holding him back because I don't think they were confident that he could handle the full load. Very similar to what Bill O'Brien talked about publicly when he said, "I don't trust him with the full instillment of my offense. I don't think he's ready for that yet." And Jalen Milroe took that to huge offense. So Kalen DeBoer in this offense, if there's anything that we learned, he's not going to hold back. Jalen Milroe is a veteran. He's a senior. He's going to give you the full installment because one thing I like about DeBoer in this offense, they don't have time to shelter Jalen Milroe. They don't got the time because they don't got the time for it. They want They trust Jalen Milroe with the full installment with the full installment, and I think for the most part it's gonna. I think for the most part it's gonna be looking really, really good for not just for the quarterback. It's going to be looking really, really good for this offense because there's going to be a different variety. A lot of these SC teams, they've never seen anything like what DeBoer is going to deliver to the table, and I'm excited to see what's going to happen next for this season.
100%.
Well, and I mean, and I can give you a quick breakdown on this and not go too much into it, but just from a standpoint of you have to put yourself in a quarterback's shoes, right? So for those of you who've played the game, imagine being back there. You're in this, this pistol shotgun. The ball snapped low. So automatically you go from having to make a pre-snap read, right, to assuming that your eyes don't go to the ball when it comes into your hands. You expect the ball to be in the same place. That's why you practice, right? So you're trying to make a pre-snap read. You've made your pre-snap read, but now the ball's low. So you have to look down. You have to get the ball. You have to pick it up, and now you have to look downfield. In the coverage, if you think like in college, they just sit in the same formation, that's not what happens, right? That means they show one thing, and then they do something different. The majority of teams do that. So now you're looking up and having to reread. On top of that, we can't sit there and say that Milroe had all these, was the only one. That the offensive line had struggles pass blocking. Okay, let's just be honest. There were struggles with that. We saw that, especially on the exterior with, a young offensive tackle with rotation. But I'll tell you, like the aspect of him looking up, he gets conditioned after time, right, of doing that same movement, basically where he's looking down, he looks up, he's trying to get through his reads. You guys want him to get to the third or even the second read, right? But now he doesn't necessarily have time, and that happens early on over and over and over. Now he just gets conditioned to making something happen himself. It's very much the Caleb Williams effect. That's what Caleb Williams was doing at USC. So you look at that aspect. Now you take it to I guess overall what we'll see this next year. I think you have a quarterback coach. You have somebody who is dedicated. We've seen him, what he did with Penix. Sheridan did this with Penix. He did a phenomenal job over at Indiana. That's why you saw Penix have early success at Indiana before 2 injuries, right? But you also see what DeBoer does, okay? And DeBoer is also very much a quarterback's guru. All right, we saw what he did at Fresno State. Like I said, I bring up Jake Haener all the time because he's a good example of a similar type of game. The next part of that, too, is with this offense in general, it's going to be tailored to where the strengths are in the offense. So you might not see everything they did at Washington and that they're going to do at Alabama. You're going to see similarities, but the strength in this offense right now is the running game. In the offensive line, like I've said before, this is a Joe Moore type of offensive line. They get that last piece in and they gel like I think they will. This is a Joe Moore type of offensive line. And You have a three-headed monster at running back. Not to mention, you have a quarterback you have to now worry about. It's gonna allow Milroe that time to, because once you do that, right, now you open up and then you get him in a rhythm. They did not put him in a rhythm last year. Why are they not throwing more plays or more throws, right, that put the quarterback into a position to build his confidence throughout the game? If you're a good play caller, you have to understand that the mindset of your quarterback is very, very, very important. So that's why you put your quarterback into a rhythm, right? So again, I think you're going to see tremendous improvement. You're going to see these things all work out. And I mean, we heard it. I think who was it? Was it Jordan Palmer, right? Who does his show, and he talked about Milroe. If you guys haven't seen it, go check it out. There's a specific episode he does on what he thinks Milroe's going to be, and he really breaks, and he talks about the snaps too from a quarterback's perspective. I didn't even play quarterback, and I know that. But I can tell you right now, this offense. Hey, Ebony, how you doing? Good to see you. I hope Noah's doing good. I'm glad he's having fun, man. I know it's a blast to finally be on campus. But I can tell you from a safety perspective, this offense is very, very difficult because you are trying to do a pre-snap read as a safety. You're a quarterback. As safety, you are the quarterback, right? So you're sitting back there. You see the entire setup. And now you're trying to read. Well, due to what they do with their pre-snap motion, with the way, just the formation shifts alone, you are constantly changing your mind because you're having to read one thing. Okay, these are my rules of engagement based on this, and this. Wait a minute, they just moved this. My rules have just changed. And then boom, wait a minute, they just did this. And then they come back the whole opposite way. So you think you have the right rules, and now you don't. Again, they create space, horizontal and vertical. Okay. But the best part is they put the ball and they get it into their playmakers' hands for a reason very quickly so they can get downfield because they just created a bunch of space. It's gonna be smooth. I think Milroe is gonna have a great year. So
yeah, and then not to mention, you talked about all that. You forgot to mention Brian Ellis. And
of course,
he's the tight ends coach who, when he was at Western Kentucky PG, he set records with Bailey Zappi as the quarterback coach and passing game coordinator. Coach Shepard was the passing game coordinator over at Washington. You have better quarterback developers at Alabama right now than you've had since 2020 when Steve Sarkisian and AJ Milwee were on campus. Right? Like
100%.
And remember, last year, guys, on third down, we ran a lot of power to the strength of the defense. It's a play that Washington ran against Oregon. The second time it was the first or the second time. I can't remember which game it was, but it was a trips formation or bunch formation. Jake, you know, Jance, y'all know, bunch formation to the field side. That's the wide side of the field, right? They made Oregon bracket the bunch. You know what I mean by bracket the bunch? They wanted to commit more resources to the bracket.
Yes.
What we call 4/3, right, Jake? They wanted Oregon to commit more resources to the bunch, right? 4 defenders, 3 receivers.
Yep.
Washington, in turns, runs pin and pull back to the other side of the field where you have less resources, right? Less count, as we call it. Running back, they give it to the running back. He goes for 30 yards on 3rd and 6, sets them up to take the lead. We didn't do that none last year. When I say none, I don't even remember us running a damn screen last year, maybe once or twice.
I can count on my hand.
Yeah. So when you look at that type of offense with Alabama, brother, that's what we need, right? Get Justice and Jam in that type of thing. I'm confident in the offense all day long and twice on Sunday.
That's so funny you bring up Oregon, though, because whose defense of scheme is that? That's Georgia's defensive scheme.
That's a whole fact.
So, I mean, and again, Georgia and Oregon maybe don't necessarily have the same type of defensive lineman because it thrives off of the defensive lineman. I've talked about this so many times. They have this term. It's a newer term. It's block destruction. They don't necessarily have like a assignment for a gap. They have an assignment for blowing up the play before it develops. Right. And so it's an interesting scheme that they run, but obviously Oregon tried to run that versus this offense, and it didn't work. But this is also why I go back with PG, and I say what you've said, what you've kind of said. Ty, we've talked about this, Coach Sean Jantz. We've all kind of said the same thing. I think that game, I think it's even more of a challenge. I think, yeah, Georgia talent wise, it's a challenge. I'm not trying to underplay the Georgia game, right? But I think like that Oklahoma game is going to be, I think that's where it's going to be an interesting challenge, because you have Seth Luttrell, right, who comes from this offense that is, a Mike Leach based offense. So he's going to have these similar concepts. And where do we see a weakness? We see our weakness being in the secondary. So how do we? It's going to be whose offense, basically whose defense can slow down the other's offense.
Dare I say, just go watch the OU Texas game, and that's what's going to happen to Bama on the defensive side of the ball, because those wide receivers for Oklahoma this year are going to eat. It's literally just, hey Jackson, we just need to give you 2 or 3 seconds, and you just lob it down the field. Someone's going to catch it.
Yeah, that's why I've kept saying over and over, the big thing that's going to be for them is this D line. Like Bama needs to have that blow up middle nose tackle who just absolutely destroys shit. Your one technique needs to blow shit up. And again,
that's the thing. I think the 2 interior Bama are going to field.
That's a fact.
Whenever you look at Tim Keenan and Jaheim Otis,
that's
gonna be hellacious. Then you have LT Overton, right, playing at his natural position.
I think our running backs are going to eat in that game. Bad on Oklahoma.
No, yeah, that's got to be Alabama's game plan to win, because like I don't think a lot of the teams, like passing has been a problem. Like the passing game has been a problem for Oklahoma and defending that over the past couple of years. I don't think it's going to be a problem this year. If Gentry's healthy all year, he's a lockdown corner. He's a first-round guy. Billy Bowman coming back with Woody Washington is absolutely huge. But then you've got guys like Makari Vickers in their second year that a lot of people are really excited for. So I really think throwing on the OU defense is going to be hard. So you've got to come in with a strong run game. But, I mean, if Devon Sears, which I don't know if y'all are familiar with that name, if Devon Sears comes out this year and has a really good year, which if he looks like he did in the spring game all year, Oklahoma's defensive line is going to be a problem for anybody. Like, this ain't the defensive line of the past 4 or 5 years. Like, it's going to be a problem, because at that point you're 3 deep on your interior with Devon Sears playing like he did in the spring game.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Well, and it will
I
be
think they're going to be
to
going up against a better offensive line, though.
True, but they're going to have seen other better offensive lines. They're going to have seen other offensive lines that are pretty good before that point. Like, they're going to have to go up against Texas's offensive line.
Yeah, Texas is the top 5 line.
Texas is going to be a good line, no doubt about it.
So, I mean, we're going to find out how good Oklahoma's defensive line is in that game. And, I mean, Dominic Williams with DeJoun Terry is going to be an absolute menace for some of these teams.
Yeah, well, it'll be interesting to see what they go with especially with Oklahoma especially stating their secondary, what they go with in that game, because Zach Alley likes to bring like these hidden blitz packages. He will blitz the living days out of like anything what he's going against, right? And so what he does is he ends up either running a lot of cover 0 or cover 1, but on top of that, he'll also run like a quarter, half with like these coverages. It's basically, for those who don't know what a quarter, half is, right? Think of it as half the field, they're playing cover 2. All right. The other half of the field, they divide it into 2, right? And they're playing a quarter here and a quarter here, making a full $1, right? So just a easy way of breaking it down. But there's more complexity to it. But it will be interesting to see how they use that to, if they bring that pressure, right? That Alley typically likes to bring to try and make Milroe make mistakes. It will be interesting to see how Bama responds from a standpoint of, do they really start to put the pressure then on these midfield kind of gaps, and does Oklahoma play, which they play typically like a too high shell? So I wonder if they'll continue to leave the field open on that standpoint. That's going to be how they go about this kind of like, back and forth. I think it's going to be very much a chess match. That's what I'm trying to say, is like, Bama, if they bring that pressure, right, that Alley typically likes to bring to try and make Milroe make mistakes. It will be interesting to see how Bama responds from a standpoint of, do they really start to put the pressure then on these midfield kind of gaps, and does Oklahoma play, which they play typically like a too high shell? So I wonder if they'll continue to leave the field open on that standpoint. That's going to be how they go about this kind of like back and forth. I think it's going to be very much a chess match. That's what I'm trying to say, is like, there's going to be a lot of calculated things and adjustments very fast throughout that game, just to try and minimize what each team is doing to beat the other. It's going to be fun. It's going to be a fun one to watch.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is you can't really watch a whole lot of film on Oklahoma this year to know what they're going to be throwing at you, because it's a completely new defensive coordinator, and it's a guy who he runs
Venables style defense.
Yep.
He runs the 3-3-5.
He has his own touch.
It's very analogous.
Yeah,
it's very analogous, right? Like I'm not saying it's the identical, but it's very comparable. And even then, I think Venables is going to be having him do a lot of Venables things.
We'll see, man, because Allie's had a lot of success. I mean, he had success at Jacksonville State, right? With like his aggression. So I wonder if Venables kind of lets him kind of like loosen up the reins a little, though. You know what I mean?
Dude, he was a menace at these camps.
No doubt, but I mean, the base defensive scheme is very analogous to what Brent Venables runs. So,
yeah, I mean, it is the same scheme. It's just different blitz packages, right? So, yeah, it'll be interesting for sure.
Yeah, he's Zach Alley's going to be able to do whatever he wants this year. So we were at the BV camps, and that's I think the first chance we've actually got to see Zach Alley like in action. And let me tell you, he's going to be a problem.
David, I think, man, David said Bama shouldn't be worried about it. I think a lot of teams are going to think that way. I think OU is your dark horse in the SEC this year. I've said it over and over and over. I really do.
I'm telling you right now, David, these OU players, they've heard the noise. They've seen all these lists.
I don't think David was.
And after Billy Bowman got snubbed and Danny Snutzman got snubbed, I'm telling you, they have a chip on their shoulder.
Well, and Ryan brings up Georgia. You know, it's funny. I was on a show earlier this morning where one of the guys in the chat, Shoddy, was in the chat, and he played for Georgia. He's a Georgia content creator, and he agreed. Like, the big thing with Georgia is like, their defensive line is a question mark. Like, and if they don't have if they do not have what they typically have on the defensive line, or if it takes a minute to develop, Georgia's not going to be what you think. That's a big part of that is the anchor of their defense. And yeah, they have players. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying Georgia's like some walk in the park. I have respect for Georgia. I really do. But I think they're going to, if they don't have that in place fast enough, or if they continue to have those question marks after the first few games, then I think Georgia potentially could end up losing to
yeah, they're going to be in trouble because the last couple of years their pass rush, you know, it's never been the main strength of Kirby Smart's defense. What's been the main strength of their defense has been that interior. It's been their 3 techs and their ones, like there's been their 3s and their 1s. It's never been their edges. And even if they were, they're edge setters. They're elite edge setters. They're not elite pass rushers. It's always been the 3s and their 1s. They don't have the depth. That's my concern with Georgia, is that their defensive line, they're not as deep. They can't really rotate 2-3 guys like Kirby Smart normally wants to. Last year, like you saw it in that that SC championship game. Like, yeah, they had a nice front line of guys, but then right behind those guys, they were either too young, or you would have those fifth year guys that you would rotate in, and they just didn't. They had almost zero impact on the game at all. It was actually really, really concerning, because that first half, that defensive line was exhausted. And then you couldn't even really rotate as much as you want because of how much they were just getting their ass kicked in that first half. Of course, they made some adjustments. They made the adjustments at the end, but even like going into this year, it's still like the same story. You're very young. You're very young on that defensive line. The talent is there. You gotta develop them.
Very true.
Ty, can I say this before we get out of here? Let me say this really quickly. I've been holding this, but I want to say this because I want people to understand. And, you know, I like to have fun. I like to put belt to ass every once in a while. You know, I see the Ohio State people and great and all that. But let me explain something that I think about Ohio State. I got a lot of respect for the Buckeyes and how they go about their business. I got a lot of respect for what they do, a lot of respect for their little coach and all that, right? But I would argue that the Buckeyes
Little
have done.
coach is
Yeah.
crazy.
I would argue that you've actually done less with more than any team in the whole damn country.
I don't know how you would argue they haven't.
You got pro prospects everywhere, and you've done nothing but get your ass whipped by Alabama a few years ago. Get beat by Georgia, a game that you supposedly should have won. You let Michigan put belt to your ass 3 years in a row. You're not even regarded as the best team in your conference anymore. You went out and paid every damn body. You got every all-star known to man at every position. So I would argue that you've actually done less with more. And as far as your running back room, you want to talk about experience? Sure. You guys got great experience coming back. Got no argument there. But you want to talk about talent, man for man, Trayvon Henderson, injury bug waiting to happen. Quinshawn Judkins, inside-outside zone back. That's why he went to the Big Ten. Dallin Hayden and James Peoples have done absolutely nothing, right? When you talk about man for man, Justice Haynes is better than all of them, right? Jam Miller, better than all of them. Daniel Hill will be a pile driver, and Richard Young could possibly start over every last one of the ones I just named, right? So please miss me with that Ohio State until you win something. Shh.
Hey, is
'Cause
Ryan
last time I
Day?
checked,
But
last
also,
time I checked, Big Blue just won the national championship.
David, who has done
Carry
less
on.
with more? Like, give me the team that has done less with more, because like you might not
Texas
like
A&M.
it. Texas A&M, but I don't know that they had more
had more
5-stars
than first
than.
rounders that Ohio State has everywhere,
Yeah.
every year, and you still hadn't won nothing. Michigan has whipped you 3 years in a row. Your quarterback was a Pro Bowler. Your quarterback was the best. Your pass running backs, your receivers all over the NFL. Your linemen, 2 of them starting for the Browns. Like, bro, I like you've done less with more. I don't want to hear that. You
Is
know?
Ryan
I mean,
Day
you got to
becoming
go
the new
back
Jimbo
real
Fisher?
far. You got to go back real far, David. What
This
was
man
the?
said Zeke.
Let's
Zeke
talk
is
about what happened last
30
time. I think
years old. I don't
Devontae
wanna hear
Smith
about
is
no
still
Zeke.
running from that defense.
You should be happy that Devontae Smith didn't
Got
play
hurt.
the second half. Oh,
He'd
it'll
have
have
had
been
400.
70. Thank you. Please. Let's
I
not
think-
even
I
bring
think-
that up.
I think the
Let's not
last
even-
team
Look,
that.
hold on, Jay. Let me say this. I'm done.
All right, go.
Ohio State before the 6 games. We deserve to be there. We Ohio State. It's only 6 games. We're undefeated. We deserve to go. COVID year. Ohio State after the game. Well,
You're right, Ebony.
you know it was only 6 games. You know
We
that, right?
aren't like y'all. We win.
Hey, you know what? Hold on. Hold on. You know what's funny? My first 4 live streams, the first 4, I think Ty was there too. The first 4 live streams I ever did on my channel, it was previewing Alabama versus Ohio State, and I talked about all the conditions. I had nothing but Ohio State fans in that live chat. And I think the max number we hit was 300 live viewers. Every Ohio State fan in that chat kept telling me, even despite the amount of players that they lost, I got the quotation, you can't see me, but they lost 2 to 3 defensive linemen. They still said they thought they were that confident that they were going to beat Alabama. I said, wait a minute, Justin Fields has broken ribs. Oh, it doesn't matter. Justin Fields is going to put up 400 because look what he did to Clemson. But aren't y'all missing 3 starting defensive linemen? Oh, we're still going to win that game because we have our rotation. Wait, but your secondary has always been a question mark. You have a nickel corner covering Devontae Smith. How is that going to work out? Oh, it doesn't matter. We're still going to go ahead and win the game. I have receipts for any Ohio State fans that want to take it that far. That want to take it that far. I have the receipts still saved to this day. If you, matter of fact, go to my playlist, click on those live streams, and look and read those comments from the amount of Ohio State fans that kept talking all that crap pregame, making all those different, even though I tried to give them the benefit of the doubt, they still thought they were confident that they were going to beat Bama by 3 touchdowns. I can't make it up. You can look up my name, Jan Sports, go to the playlist, and click on those live streams, read the comments.
And they kicked me to when we had a gang of starters out. They had Tommy Togiao, the other defensive lineman, and a damn kicker. That's all the starters they had out. Everybody else was backups. Newsflash: Alabama had more starters out than you did. Landon Dickerson was out. Malachi Moore was out. I can keep going if you want. Excuses. What have you won? Not a damn thing. Shout out to Michigan, the Big Ten champs. We can move on.
Michigan's winning again this year too. Mark it down. Michigan's
There you go, PG. Give them,
I'm telling you.
If Ryan Day
Ohio
can't
State.
beat them,
He's got to go, man.
Hold on. Michigan's beating Ohio State.
Mhm.
Ohio State's going to the playoffs, and Ryan Day still gets fired. Watch. Because losing to Michigan 3 times in a row,
Oh.
I mean, that's bad, but losing 4 times in a row, that's called for crucifixion out there.
PJ, could we not say 5 times in a row? Because remember, there's no divisions this year. So if Ohio State and Michigan are the top 2, yes, they play that November. They play the next week. They would play each other the next week after the game in November. They'll play each other the next week.
Before we get out of here, David, I hear you, man. Listen, I respect Ohio State, but when you say we're talking, my brother and Coach Sean, my brother in Christ, you brought up Ohio State, and we interact with the chat. You kept saying like, "Oh, well, where is these players going?" The Ohio State. You asked for the smoke, and now when you get the smoke, it's why are they talking? Man, why are they talking about? You see, they go from wanting the smoke to then, man, hands in pockets. Why are they even talking about us?
See, Miss Ebony, that's your people. That's your fan base, Miss Ebony. That's your fan base. Always the ones that, because this has been going on for years, and this is why people don't like Ohio State fans, because you start crap and then you don't finish it. You start the crap, you don't finish it. You don't finish.
You ain't won a natty since 2014. You hadn't won a natty since freshmen were 8 years old. I don't want to hear nothing you got to say. Win your conference first. Shout out to Michigan.
We love Miss Ebony,
I don't want to talk to you. You ain't even relevant. Michigan is relevant.
And here's the next thing for the Georgia fan in here, Ryan. Y'all still run freaking pattern match cover 3. If you think that's gonna work against DeBoer's offense, it doesn't work. Like, all you got to do is look at what happened to Dan Lanning 1, 2, 3 times. It's the same thing happened to Sark, and he doesn't. They try to run something somewhat similar, but it doesn't work. You can't run pattern match, Ryan, for the Georgia fan in here. And if you don't got a D line that does the block destruction, it doesn't matter what you have. And also, on the next thing, you said that Georgia had the number 1 like best athletes, period. Dude, Alabama just got ranked number 1 for that, by the way. So I don't even want to like hate hearing that, man, because Georgia's great. Don't get me wrong, but they're still running similar things, and they haven't adjusted necessarily yet. Okay, they get the talent to help them stay at that level. That I get, but they haven't necessarily adjusted to this new offensive era that we're coming into. Truly, because we are starting to see something unique and new. What's PG?
Focus on Georgia and Auburn and get off the Ohio State.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
hey, I hear you, Miss Ebony. But in fairness, like I said, we had an Ohio State fan come in here and talk about how they're doing good. We heard it. He
focus on how not allow Michigan to whip your asses again, and we'll do that.
Or getting to the playoffs.
Ebony.
Well, and somebody asked.
No, I get on you.
Somebody asked PG a question, or Lynn asked PG a question. What do you think Oklahoma's record is going to be?
Yeah, because
and then we'll get out of here because we're 2 hours and 30 minutes in.
Oh, ooh.
Hey Lynn, you can jump over to my podcast. I got a whole prediction video on it, and I break it down.
It's all love though for the Ohio State fans in here. In all seriousness, not joking around, I do have a lot of respect for your program, but I think if we're all being as honest as possible, you got some questions, right? And I know you can say Bama's nervous. Listen, Bama's in a new venture. It's a lot of excitement. I won't say nervous. A lot of excitement. But Ohio State's got some questions, man. They lost to a guy last year whose head coach was kicked off the team for that game. So many distractions, and you couldn't get it done. So listen. I think Ohio State's going to be fantastic, David. All seriousness, right? Like we like to joke around and everything. And genuinely, though, thank you for hopping over here, contributing to the conversation. In all seriousness, we're just having a good time. I think Ohio State's going to be very good this year. I think they're going to be dangerous. I just have some answers that I need to see. But that being said, y'all have a dangerous roster. Y'all have a real dangerous roster. You get a dangerous. I mean, I just need Heartline to get up out of there, David. Do me that one kindness. Get Heartline up out of there. That way, the rest of college football can.
Where's he gonna go? He turned down the Cincinnati job.
I don't know, man. I just need him out of Ohio State. He has an incredible brand to recruit off of, and that's a problem for every for every college football team out there. In all seriousness, we just like to have fun. Ebony, all love. David, all love. I do appreciate y'all hopping over here.
That Miami job's going to open up next season.
That Miami job could open up. He'd look real good in those colors too. But all seriousness, guys, we're going to hop out of here. We've been live for 2 hours and 30 minutes just about. We're going to go down the line, start with Jance, ending with myself, let you all know where we can be found.
Twitter, Jant716, YouTube, Jant Sports. Of course, you guys want to get in contact with me, just have any sort of conversation, or if you want to do some sort of collaborations, of course, you just gotta hit me up at Jant716 on Twitter, man. Besides that, Jant Sports YouTube, that's where you always can find me. And then, of course, I'll be here for the most part on Mondays or whatever ties normally on is live. Or even Coach Sean. I know Coach Sean and Jake. I know they got to get their channels up in the PG. PG. Any pretty much anybody asks me, I normally hop on.
100. Yeah, same thing. Like I'm down to collaborate with anybody. If you want a guest on your channel, let me know. I love talking football from a former player perspective. And I think in the end too, like you guys, definitely find me on Twitter you can see kind of a small little there at the bottom of the screen, but it's all capital letters at Coach_J Merr, MERR. So all capital letters. And then we're planning on having my channel probably coming up here by this weekend and start rolling out some videos and get to a point where we can do some lives and have some fun. And you can catch me on the different channels, like I said, over with Jason and the coach at Hall of Fame College Football. You catch me with Coach Sean, JMHO Sports Talk, obviously here at Round Table Sports, and go from there. And yet, like I said, PG, if you ever want me on, I jump on too. So, but hey, it's a good time, and much respect to all the fans that jump in here with all the different teams. In the end of the day, it's love talking college football in general. So very much appreciate it.
Yeah, I agree with Coach Jay and Coach Jake. I agree with both of those guys. We just having fun. Ebony, I'll tell you, David, we just have a good time, man, picking on each other. It's all love, bro. You can find me at JMHO Sports. It's just my humble opinion. JMHO Sports Talk on Twitter and YouTube. These guys will be on there as well. We got lots of videos we just started channel up a few weeks ago. It's doing really, really, really well. A big shout out to the AAA people who came in. Shout out to my broski, Coach Smook, doing his thing. Shout out to Ty. Thank you to a big thank you to Ty, who put these great panels together and with a bunch of great guys talking football and having a good time. And shout out to Jason. Shout out to everybody who take part in it, man. Coach Jay, Coach Jake. Shout out to PG. And again, thank you to Ty, JMHO Sports Talk on Twitter and YouTube.
Yeah, y'all know where to find me over at the PG Show. A lot of y'all are familiar with it. During the football season, I'm on here almost every week. So can't wait. This season's going to be great.
Going to be a lot of fun. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in. You already know you can find us on lives Monday, 5:30 Central Standard Time, and then Friday mornings, 9:30 is where we typically roll, 9:30 in the morning. Also, this week on Thursday, download the Bleacher Report app, because on Thursday, I will be over there talking about early SEC winter predictions. That'll be this Thursday, June 13th at 2 p.m. on the Bleacher Report app. Can't wait to see you all over there. Would love to have you over there to increase the interaction. It's going to be a great time. Shout out to Bleacher Report for continuing to give me the opportunity, to continue to give me the platform. Y'all already know. You give me a microphone and a platform, and I'm going to continue talking. My poor wife can tell you that, right? She's very thankful I have this, because if not, I'd be talking her head off about football. So, yeah, Lynn, download that Bleacher Report app. I'll be over there talking SEC. We're going to have a good time. We're going to dive real deep into it, and it's going to be a great time. Thank you for everybody who came out. If we didn't get to shout you out, appreciate you being in here from Matt Farms, even our resident Auburn fan who, Chris. Piano Man, Lynn, Matt
Shout out to
Farms.
Piano Man.
Moon Rocka in here. We got Booker 129, Da Dundies, which I love that name. I'm a big Office fan, so I love Da Dundies. All right, that's a great one. Kimberly, thank you for coming in here. Katrina, LaQuacia, Ebony, Alfonso.
Ebony.
Who else can I find in here? Alpha, Kenny, David, yourself, man. I mean, I know he says he respects Alabama. We wouldn't be going as hard at Ohio State if there wasn't some respect, right? Like, teams at the top, they it's like a king of the hill. You know what I mean? It's all about trying to push each other down. And it's the most fun when you're talking to another team that's near the top of the mountain. That's why it's no fun for me to get at Chris. Right? It's no fun for me to get at Chris because Auburn's nowhere near the top of the mountain.
Wow, that was a belt to ass hard. It
Belt
broke the wooden
to-
spoon.
Yes.
So we will see y'all on Friday morning. Content coming throughout the week. As always, let me introduce you to the 6th member of the panel. And you already know that it rolls. The spinning wheel of doom.